Greetings, dear viewers. You're watching Harryverse X. We have prepared something special for you today. What if Kratos and Atreus found Harry in Godric's hollow and raised the god of magic and lightning in Midgard? Your likes and subscriptions keep this channel alive. If you enjoy our content, please show your support. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. Chapter 1, The Child of Two Magics. The night air crackled with something Kratos had never felt before. Not quite godly, not quite mortal, something else entirely. He'd followed this strange energy signature across realms, dragging his son Atreus along through a tear between worlds that shouldn't have existed. Father, look! Atreus pointed toward a column of green light piercing the dark sky in the distance. Kratos tightened his grip on the Leviathan axe. Stay behind me, boy. The village they'd emerged in seemed ordinary enough, stone cottages, narrow streets, a sense of peace disrupted by whatever catastrophe had just unfolded. No monsters roared, no gods proclaimed their dominance, just an eerie silence broken only by a sound that made even Kratos pause. A baby crying. They approached a partially destroyed house, roof blown apart, walls crumbling. Magic unlike any Kratos had encountered before saturated the air, not Norse, not Greek, but something equally powerful in its own way. Something terrible happened here, Atreus whispered, bow ready. Inside, they found two bodies. A man sprawled at the foot of the stairs, no visible wounds but unmistakably dead. Upstairs, a woman with fiery red hair lay crumpled before a crib, her body positioned as if her final act had been to shield whatever lay behind her. And there, in the crib, screaming his lungs out with a bleeding lightning-shaped cut on his forehead, was a black-haired baby boy. Kratos approached cautiously. He'd seen enough godly manipulations to suspect a trap, but the child seemed genuinely mortal, yet buzzing with that same strange energy that had drawn them here. Father, we can't leave him, Atreus said, already lowering his bow and reaching toward the baby. Kratos caught his son's wrist. We know nothing of this child. He's alone. His parents are dead. Atreus met his father's eyes with that stubborn defiance Kratos both respected and found infuriating. Look around you. Something unnatural happened here. If we leave him, whatever did this might come back. The baby's cries softened as he noticed them, green eyes wide and curious despite his trauma. The wound on his forehead glowed faintly with power. Before Kratos could respond, a loud crack split the air. A figure appeared from nowhere, an old man with a long silver beard wearing the strangest clothing Kratos had ever seen. Stand back, boy, Kratos ordered, stepping between his son and this new threat. The old man's eyes widened at the sight of them. Extraordinary. You are not of this world, are you? He spoke with calm authority that reminded Kratos too much of Zeus. I'm afraid I must ask you to step away from the child. Harry is expected elsewhere. Who are you to make demands? Kratos growled. Albus Dumbledore, headmaster of Hogwarts. That child has just survived something impossible and has a destiny in our world. His mother's sacrifice, Kratos cut him off. I know of destinies, old man. They rarely favor the child who bears them. Another crack announced a second arrival, a giant of a man with wild hair and beard. Professor Dumbledore. I came as quick as the newcomer froze at the sight of Kratos. Who the bloody hell is that? The distraction was enough. Kratos felt something, a power building around them, similar to what had brought them here. The tear between realms was reopening. Father. Atreus called, pointing to swirling energy forming around their feet. In one fluid motion, Kratos snatched the baby from the crib. Your world failed to protect this child's parents. We will not give it a chance to fail him too. The old wizard raised what looked like a carved stick, but too late. The tear between worlds pulled them back, Kratos, Atreus, and now the baby, leaving the wizard shouting in alarm as reality shifted around them. They emerged back in Midgard, near their cabin, the baby still clutched in Kratos's massive arm. Did you just kidnap a baby? Atreus asked, eyes wide. Kratos looked down at the child, who had fallen silent and was staring up at him with those unnerving green eyes. The wound on his forehead still glowed faintly. I removed him from danger, Kratos said firmly. What are we going to do with him? Kratos had no answer. The child, Harry, the old man had called him, reached up with tiny fingers and grabbed one of the god of war's fingers with surprising strength. First, we find Mimir, Kratos decided. He may know of this strange magic. A wizard child? From another realm entirely? Mimir's severed head laughed from where Kratos had placed him on a stump. Just when I think you can't surprise me, brother. The baby sat on Atreus's lap, happily grabbing at the boy's tunic. Can you feel it? Kratos asked. His magic is different. It's nothing like our runic arts, Mimir agreed. More internal, less dependent on the world around him. Fascinating, really. And you say he survived an attack that killed his parents? There was a mark on his head, Atreus said. It was glowing green, like the light we saw. Let me see the wee lad, Mimir requested. Atreus brought Harry closer. The cut had already begun healing, but still held that strange energy. That's no ordinary wound, Mimir said, suddenly serious. There's death magic there, old magic. Someone tried to kill this child and failed spectacularly. Will he be dangerous? Kratos asked. All power is dangerous, brother. But the boy himself? He's just a babe. What he becomes will depend largely on you too, I suspect. So we're keeping him? Atreus couldn't hide his excitement. Kratos frowned. We have enemies enough without adding those from another realm. If you take him back, those who failed to protect his parents will decide his fate, Mimir pointed out. And whatever tried to kill him might try again. At least here, he has you. Kratos stared at the child. He had not planned to father another after Atreus, certainly not one with strange magic from another world. And yet. He stays, he decided. For now. Atreus whooped with joy. Harry, startled by the sound, began to cry, and every wooden object in the cabin suddenly rose 3 feet in the air before crashing down. Mimir laughed. Oh, this will be interesting. Raising Harry alongside Atreus proved challenging in ways Kratos had never anticipated. The boy's accidental magic manifested early and often. Objects floated when he was happy, exploded when he was angry, and sometimes transformed entirely when he was feeling particularly creative. Harry! Not again! Atreus shouted as his bow turned into a snake for the 3rd time that week. The 5-year-old Harry giggled from where he sat cross-legged on the floor. Sorry, he hissed, then looked confused at the strange sound that had come out of his mouth. Kratos entered the cabin, dropping a freshly killed deer outside. What has he done now? Snake, Atreus said, pointing at his transformed weapon. Kratos sighed. Harry. Focus. The small boy straightened his back immediately at Kratos's command. For all his mischief, he respected the god of war's authority, even feared it a little despite Kratos never raising a hand to him. Close your eyes. Remember what I taught you. Breathe in strength, breathe out fear. Harry obeyed, his small chest rising and falling. After a moment, the snake shimmered and turned back into Atreus's bow. Good, Kratos said simply. Harry beamed at the rare praise. Can we train now? Please. You're too young for weapons training. But Atreus said you started training him when he was little. You are littler, Atreus teased, ruffling Harry's perpetually messy hair. I am not. I'm big. To emphasize his point, Harry stood as tall as he could, which brought him roughly to Atreus's chest. Kratos regarded the boy thoughtfully. He was small for his age, but what he lacked in size he made up for in determination. Unlike Atreus, who'd been sickly as a young child, Harry was robust and energetic. His magic, though, remained unpredictable. You may observe today's training, Kratos decided. If you can sit still and not turn anything into snakes. Harry pumped his fist in victory. Yes. I promise. No snakes. Outside, Kratos put Atreus through increasingly complex combat drills. At 16, the boy had grown skilled with bow and blade alike. Harry watched, entranced, occasionally mimicking Atreus's movements with a stick he pretended was a sword. Why can't I use magic like Harry? Atreus asked during a water break. Your magic is different, Kratos reminded him. Tied to your god blood and to runes. But it's not as immediate. Atreus glanced at Harry, who was now making his stick hover a few inches above his palm. His magic comes without discipline, Kratos said. That makes it dangerous. I can be disciplined. Harry piped up, dropping his stick as he tried to pronounce the word. Kratos knelt to meet the boy at eye level. Can you? Then show me. Each day, I want you to practice sitting still and quiet. When you can do that for as long as Atreus trains, then perhaps you will be ready for training of your own. Harry nodded solemnly. I can do it. To everyone's surprise, he could. Each day, Harry sat cross-legged, watching Atreus train, barely moving except to occasionally scratch his nose or brush his unruly hair from his eyes. Kratos found himself impressed despite his reservations. The boy had willpower. After 2 weeks, Kratos approached Harry at the end of a training session. You have shown discipline, boy. Harry looked up, hope lighting his eyes. Does that mean? Tomorrow, we begin your training. Not with weapons, you are still too small. But you will learn to control your body, and through it, perhaps your magic. Harry leapt to his feet. Thank you. In his excitement, sparks literally flew from his fingertips, igniting a nearby patch of grass. Atreus quickly stamped out the flames. Maybe start with fire control. Harry's training began with basic movements, stances, footwork, breathing techniques. Kratos was a demanding teacher, but not cruel. He remembered his own harsh upbringing in Sparta and had no wish to replicate it, even as he recognized the need for discipline. Again, Kratos instructed as 6-year-old Harry moved through a series of forms. Your balance is off. Harry, drenched in sweat despite the cool morning air, adjusted his stance and began again. His magic had grown somewhat more controlled over the past year, though strong emotion still triggered unpredictable outbursts. Better, Kratos acknowledged. Now hold that final position. Harry froze, his small body trembling with effort. Feel the earth beneath your feet. Draw strength from it. I'm trying, Harry gasped. Do not try. Do. Harry gritted his teeth, determination flashing in his green eyes. The trembling stopped. For 30 seconds, he held the position perfectly still, then Kratos nodded and he collapsed, panting. You are improving, Kratos said. It wasn't effusive praise, but Harry had learned to recognize the god of war's subtle signs of approval. When do I get a real weapon? Harry asked, not for the first time. When you can control yourself, Kratos answered, also not for the first time. Atreus, who had been practicing archery nearby, joined them. Father, I've been thinking. Maybe Harry needs something else to focus his magic through. Like my bow channels my shots. Kratos considered this. What do you suggest? The wizards we saw, they had those stick things. Wands, Harry said suddenly, the word coming to him from somewhere deep in his subconscious. They're called wands. Kratos and Atreus exchanged looks. Do you remember them? Atreus asked gently. Harry shook his head. Just the word. And, green light. He touched the lightning-shaped scar on his forehead, now a faint silver line but still occasionally painful. We have no wands here, Kratos said. And I would not return to that realm to find one. Maybe we don't need their kind of wand, Atreus suggested. What if we made something that combines their magic with ours? Something with runes? The idea had merit. Kratos nodded slowly. We will speak to Brock and Sindri. They may have insight. The journey to the Dwarven Forge took them through territories still occasionally patrolled by remnants of Odin's forces. Kratos kept Heri close, while Atreus scouted ahead. The boy still possessed no weapon, but his magic had become reactive to danger, a useful if unpredictable defense mechanism. Stay within sight, boy, Kratos reminded Heri, who had a tendency to wander off exploring. I know, Heri sighed, kicking a stone along the path. They had nearly reached the Lake of Nine when a Draugr patrol emerged from the trees. 5 of the undead creatures, armor fused to rotting flesh, weapons raised. Heri, behind me, Kratos ordered, drawing the Leviathan axe. Atreus was already firing, arrows finding vulnerable joints and eye sockets. Kratos engaged the largest Draugr, axe cleaving through ancient armor. Neither noticed the 6th Draugr approaching from behind until Heri shouted in alarm. The creature lunged for the boy, blade whistling through the air. Instinctively, Heri raised his hands. A pulse of raw magic, not the controlled Norse runes Atreus wielded, but something more primal, burst from his palms. The Draugr flew backward, slamming into a tree with such force that its desiccated body shattered. Kratos dispatched the last of his opponents in time to see Heri standing there, hands still raised, eyes wide with surprise at his own power. Did you see that? Heri asked, voice shaking with excitement and residual fear. I saw, Kratos said, inspecting the boy for injuries. Finding none, he added, you reacted well. Atreus jogged over. That was amazing, Heri. How did you do that? I don't know, Heri admitted. I just wanted it away from me, and then it happened. Intention, Kratos murmured. Your magic responds to your will, not to words or runes. They continued to the forge with Kratos deep in thought. The boy's power was growing, and with it, the need for proper channeling. A focus for the wizard child? Brock scratched his blue beard. Interesting problem. Sindri, less filthy but more neurotic than his brother, peered at Heri with fascination. May I? He asked, holding out a hand toward Heri's forehead. Heri nodded, and Sindri lightly touched the lightning scar. Extraordinary residual energy, the dwarf muttered. Nothing I've ever felt before. Dark, but the boy himself isn't dark. Quite the contrary. Can you craft something to help him control his magic? Atreus asked. Brock grunted. Maybe. But we'd need materials that respond to both his inner magic and our runes. The World Tree, Sindri suggested. A branch from Yggdrasil might serve as a conduit between magical systems. Kratos frowned. Harvesting from the World Tree is dangerous. I didn't say it would be easy, Sindri sniffed. But for a proper focus, that's what you'd need. Heri, who had been quiet during this exchange, suddenly spoke up. What about a storm giant? They have lightning, like my scar. Everyone turned to look at him. What do you mean, lad? Brock asked. Heri touched his scar self-consciously. Sometimes, when it hurts, I see lightning. And I feel power, like when I make things happen without meaning to. If storm giants control lightning too, maybe something from them would work. Atreus looked at his father. He might be right. Thor's hammer channels lightning. We are not seeking out Thor's hammer, Kratos said firmly. No, but perhaps something else, Sindri mused. There's a storm giant burial ground in the northern mountains. If we could retrieve a bone fragment, or better yet, a heart stone. Heart stone? Heri asked. When storm giants die, their hearts crystallize, Atreus explained. They're supposed to contain the giant's power. Heri's eyes lit up. Can we go? Please. Kratos regarded the eager boy thoughtfully. The journey would be dangerous, but the need for Harry to control his magic was becoming urgent. Each emotional outburst grew stronger as he aged. "We will go," he decided. "But you will obey every command without question." Harry nodded vigorously. "I promise." The northern mountains lived up to their reputation for hostility. Bitter winds cut through even the warmest firs, and snow made the steep paths treacherous. Kratos carried Harry when the drifts grew too deep for the boy's short legs, while Atreus scouted for signs of the burial ground. "There!" Atreus called, pointing to a massive stone archway half buried in the mountainside. Runes carved into the arch glowed faintly blue in the dim light. "What do they say?" Harry asked, peering at the strange symbols. Atreus squinted. "Something about eternal storm and worthy hearts. I think it's a warning." "Most giant ruins come with warnings," Kratos said dryly, setting Harry down as they reached the entrance. "Stay close." Inside, the temperature dropped even further. Their breath fogged before them as they navigated the massive hallways clearly built for beings 4 times their height. Statues of storm giants lined the central chamber, each depicted with lightning emanating from their hands or eyes. "Look at these," Harry whispered, reaching out to touch one statue's base. The moment his fingers made contact, blue energy crackled up the statue. The eyes glowed, and a deep voice boomed through the chamber. "Who disturbs our rest?" Kratos pushed Harry behind him, weapons ready. "We seek a heart stone for the boy. Nothing more." Lightning arced between the statues, forming a glowing network above their heads. "The heart stones are sacred. Only those of storm blood may claim them." Harry stepped forward despite Kratos' attempt to keep him back. "I have lightning too," he said, touching his scar. "See?" For a moment, nothing happened. Then, seemingly in response to Harry's words, the scar glowed with the same green energy they'd seen the night they found him. The statue's lightning changed color, shifting from blue to a similar green. Unexpected, the voice rumbled. "A child of foreign storms, yet familiar. You may approach the heart chamber," lightning marked one. The floor before them shifted, revealing a staircase leading deeper into the mountain. "How did you do that?" Atreus asked, wide-eyed. Harry looked equally confused. "I don't know. I just felt like I should show them my scar." "Your instincts serve you well," Kratos acknowledged. "But I go first." The staircase led to a circular chamber where dozens of crystallized hearts floated in niches along the walls. Each pulsed with inner light, some blue, some white, a few rare ones purple or yellow. "They're beautiful," Harry breathed. "How do we choose one?" Atreus wondered. Before Kratos could suggest caution, Harry walked directly to a small green-tinged crystal in a lower niche. Unlike the others, which were roughly the size of a giant's fist, this one was barely larger than Harry's palm. "This one," Harry said with certainty. "It's calling me." Kratos frowned. "Be careful, boy. Magic that calls to you often seeks to use you." "No, it's not like that," Harry insisted. "It feels friendly. Like it wants to help." After a moment's hesitation, Kratos nodded. "Take it then." Harry reached for the heart stone. As his fingers closed around it, lightning erupted from the crystal, enveloping his arm. Atreus shouted in alarm, but Harry remained calm, even as the energy crawled up his arm and toward his scar. When the lightning touched the scar, Harry gasped, not in pain, but in surprise. For a brief moment, his green eyes glowed with the same energy. Then the lightning receded, flowing back into the crystal, which now pulsed in rhythm with Harry's heartbeat. "Are you hurt?" Kratos demanded. Harry shook his head, staring at the crystal in wonder. "No. It feels right." He looked up at Kratos. "I can feel my magic better now, like it's more awake." The voice of the statue spoke again. "The stone of Farbody accepts you, child of foreign storms. Use it wisely. Far body? Atreus repeated. But we thank you for your gift, Kratos interrupted, clearly wanting to leave before complications arose. We will go now. They exited the burial ground without further incident, though Atreus kept glancing at Harry and the heart stone with newfound interest. Farbody was Loki's father in the myths, he explained once they were clear of the ruins. A storm giant known as Cruel Striker. I'm not cruel, Harry protested. No, but you've got quite a strike, Atreus grinned, referencing the Draugr Harry had blasted. Maybe that's why the stone chose you. The stone did not choose him, Kratos corrected. Harry chose the stone. Remember that distinction, boy. You control your magic, not the reverse. Harry nodded solemnly, clutching the heart stone. Can we show Brock and Sindri now? I want to see what they can make with it. The dwarven brothers exceeded even their own boastful promises. Using the storm giant's heart stone as a core, they crafted a staff topped with a holding chamber for the crystal. Norse runes spiraled down the length of the staff, which was sized perfectly for Harry's small stature. The runes will help stabilize and direct the magic, Sindri explained. The wood is from a lightning-struck ash near Yggdrasil, not from the world tree itself, but influenced by it. Brock grunted. And I added a little something special. Staff can shrink down to the size of a dagger when you're not using it. More practical for a runt like you. I'm not a runt, Harry protested automatically. You're the smallest 7-year-old I've ever seen, Brock shot back. I'm still 6. Whatever. Point is, the staff's adjustable. Just think about what size you want, and it'll change. Harry accepted the staff reverently. The moment his hands closed around it, the heart stone glowed bright green, and the runes lit up in sequence from bottom to top. Go on then, Sindri encouraged. Try channeling your magic through it. Harry looked to Kratos for permission. At the god of war's nod, he pointed the staff at a small rock and concentrated, trying to lift it as he sometimes did accidentally. The stone shot upward with such force that it embedded itself in the forge's ceiling. Oops, Harry winced. Not bad for a first try, Atreus laughed. Less power, more control, Kratos instructed. Remember your training. Breathe. Harry tried again with a different rock, this time focusing on controlled movement rather than raw power. The stone rose slowly, hovered, and then settled back down precisely where it had started. I did it. Harry exclaimed, then stumbled slightly. Channeling through a focus will tire you faster until you build stamina, Sindri cautioned. Don't overdo it. The boy needs rest, Kratos decided. We return home. As they prepared to leave, Harry whispered something to the staff, and it shrank down to dagger size as promised. He tucked it carefully into his belt, a look of determination replacing his usual carefree expression. Thank you, he told the dwarf sincerely. I'll practice every day. See that you do, Brock grunted. That's top-quality work there. Don't waste it by being sloppy. The journey home was quieter than usual, with Harry lost in thought. Only when they were nearly at the cabin did he speak up. Father, he said, addressing Kratos directly. Kratos raised an eyebrow. Harry usually called him by name, occasionally, sir, when in trouble, but rarely, father, that term he seemed to reserve for his birth father, who existed only in Harry's occasional nightmares. What is it? Kratos asked. I want to be worthy of this staff, Harry said seriously. I want to be worthy of being your son. Something tightened in Kratos's chest, an emotion he rarely allowed himself to acknowledge. He placed a heavy hand on Harry's shoulder. You already are, he said simply. Harry's answering smile outshone even the Heartstone's glow. In the months that followed, Harry dedicated himself to mastering the staff with the same determination he'd shown in his physical training. The focus dramatically improved his control, though accidental magic still occurred during moments of extreme emotion. By his 7th birthday, a date they'd approximated based on what little they knew of his origins, Harry could reliably perform basic magic through the staff, moving objects, creating light, even generating small electrical discharges similar to a storm giant's abilities but on a much smaller scale. Again, Kratos instructed as Harry attempted to hit specific targets with controlled lightning bolts. Sweat dripped down Harry's face as he aimed the staff at a knothole in a distant tree. A thin bolt of electricity shot forth, missing by inches. "I can't do it," Harry panted. "It's too far." "Distance is an illusion," Kratos said. "Your target exists where your mind places it." Harry frowned in concentration, adjusting his stance. This time, when he released the energy, the bolt struck true, leaving a scorch mark precisely on the knothole. "Good," Kratos nodded. "Now 3 in succession." Before Harry could attempt this, Atreus came sprinting through the trees. "Father! Draugr, at least 20, heading this way, and something else with them. Something bigger." Kratos immediately shifted to combat readiness. "Harry, return to the cabin." "But I can help." Harry protested, gripping his staff. "You are not ready for true battle," Kratos said firmly. "I hit all my targets yesterday. And the day before. Targets do not fight back," Kratos growled. "Go. Now." Reluctantly, Harry turned toward the cabin, staff clutched tightly in his hands. He'd made it halfway there when the first Draugr burst through the trees behind him. Harry spun, instinctively raising his staff. The Heartstone pulsed as he channeled a bolt of energy that caught the Draugr square in the chest, knocking it backward. "Harry!" Atreus shouted, already firing arrows at more Draugr emerging from the forest. Kratos engaged the bulk of the undead force, axe whirling in lethal arcs. The battle spread across the clearing, and despite Kratos's order, Harry found himself cut off from the cabin. A Draugr lunged at him, sword swinging. Harry ducked and rolled as Kratos had taught him, coming up with his staff pointed at the creature's legs. A burst of magic shattered its knee, dropping it to the ground where a follow-up blast destroyed its head. "Get to cover!" Atreus called, backing up toward Harry while continuing to fire. They made it to a fallen log just as an enormous figure crashed through the trees, an ogre, its body covered in Draugr armor pieces it had apparently collected as trophies. Kratos immediately redirected his attack toward this greater threat, leaping onto the ogre's back and driving his axe into its shoulder. The beast roared, reaching back to dislodge him. From their position, Atreus continued to provide covering fire, his arrows enhanced with runic magic that stunned or slowed their targets. Harry, following his brother's example, sent bolts of lightning at any Draugr that got too close. The ogre slammed Kratos into a tree with enough force to crack the trunk. For a moment, the god of war seemed dazed, and the ogre raised a massive fist to crush him. "Father!" Atreus cried, firing desperately at the ogre's eyes. Without thinking, Harry ran forward, staff raised. The Heartstone glowed brighter than ever as he channeled not just his practiced lightning but the raw magic that had always responded to his emotions. Norse runes blazed along the staff's length as two magical traditions merged. A bolt of green-tinged lightning, far larger than anything Harry had managed before, erupted from the staff's tip, striking the ogre directly in the chest. The creature staggered backward, its flesh charring where the bolt hit. Kratos seized the opportunity, recovering his axe and burying it deep in the ogre's skull. As the last Draugr fell and the ogre collapsed, an unnatural silence fell over the clearing. Harry stood trembling, staff still raised, the Heartstone pulsing in time with his racing heart. Kratos approached slowly, taking in the scene, the dead ogre, the scattered Draugr, and his 7-year-old adopted son standing amid the destruction, power still crackling around his staff. "Harry," he said quietly. Harry looked up, suddenly afraid he'd angered Kratos by disobeying. "I'm sorry. I couldn't get to the cabin, and then you were in trouble, and I just..." Kratos placed a hand on his shoulder. "You fought well." Relief washed over Harry's face. "Really?" "Yes." Kratos examined him critically. Your form needs work. Your stance was sloppy. But your instincts were good. Coming from Kratos, this was high praise indeed. Atreus joined them, grinning widely. That was incredible. I've never seen lightning like that before. It felt different, Harry admitted. Like my magic and the runes were working together instead of just alongside each other. Kratos nodded thoughtfully. You have found your path, boy. Not purely of your original world, nor fully of ours, but something new. Harry looked down at his staff, where the runes were still faintly glowing. The god of two magics. Atreus laughed. Maybe just Harry of Midgard for now. We can work on a fancier title when you're older. As they headed back to the cabin to clean up after the battle, Harry felt a sense of belonging stronger than ever before. He might have been born in another realm, to parents he barely remembered, but here, with Kratos and Atreus, he had found his true home. He was Harry of Midgard, child of two worlds, master of two magics. And this was just the beginning. Chapter 2, Scars and Runes. Harry woke up screaming again, the nightmare fading but the pain in his scars sharp and real. 5 years had passed since the battle with the ogre, and at 12, he'd grown into a capable fighter, lean and quick rather than bulky, with reflexes that sometimes surprised even Kratos. But the nightmares kept coming. Same dream? Atreus asked, already awake and sitting on the edge of his bed. At 22, he'd grown tall and confident, though still lean compared to Kratos. Harry nodded, pressing his palm against the lightning scar. Green light. Laughter. A woman screaming. The cabin door swung open as Kratos entered, face grim. Your scar is glowing again. Harry didn't need a mirror to know it was true. He could feel the heat radiating from the mark, the same eerie green energy that had first brought Kratos and Atreus to Godric's Hollow 12 years ago. It's getting worse, Harry admitted. And more frequent. Kratos studied him with that penetrating gaze that still made Harry feel like he was being assessed for weaknesses. Your magic has grown stronger as well. That much was true. Harry's abilities had expanded far beyond what any of them had expected. His staff, which he'd named Prongs after a word that sometimes echoed in his dreams, had become an extension of himself. The blend of his innate wizarding magic and Norse runes had created something entirely new. Maybe they're connected, Atreus suggested. Your power growing and the dreams intensifying. Harry swung his legs off the bed and grabbed Prongs from where it leaned against the wall. The heart stone pulsed in greeting, as it always did when he touched the staff. Whatever it is, I'd rather be doing something about it than just talking, Harry said. Can we train? Kratos nodded once. Get dressed. We leave in 5 minutes. Outside, dawn was just breaking over Midgard. They'd moved twice since Harry was 7, each time settling farther from human settlements. Their current home sat at the edge of a dense forest, with mountains visible to the north and a lake to the east. It offered both seclusion and multiple escape routes, important considerations for a family that included 2 gods and whatever Harry was becoming. Training had evolved as Harry grew. What began as simple stances and discipline exercises had developed into complex combat drills incorporating both physical fighting and magical techniques. Kratos still wouldn't let Harry use a bladed weapon, not until you're taller than the blade, he decreed, but Harry had learned to use his staff as both magical focus and physical weapon. Begin, Kratos commanded, standing back to observe. Atreus attacked first, bow abandoned in favor of short blades. Harry blocked with his staff, channeling just enough energy through it to create a shimmering shield. They'd discovered this ability 2 years ago. Harry could create barriers of force using combinations of his innate magic and specific Norse runes. You're telegraphing your moves, Atreus criticized, feinting left before striking right. Harry adjusted but was still caught off guard, taking a hit to his ribs from the flat of Atreus's blade. Focus, Kratos called. Your mind wanders. Sorry, Harry muttered, recentering himself. He spun Prongs in a tight arc, simultaneously releasing a controlled burst of lightning at Atreus's feet. Not enough to harm, just enough to force him to jump back. Harry used the space to press forward, staff becoming a blur as he executed a complex attack pattern Kratos had taught him. Atreus countered each move, but Harry could tell he was working harder now. At 12, Harry couldn't match his brother's strength, but his speed and unpredictability often gave him an edge. Enough, Kratos said after several minutes. Harry, your form is improving, but you rely too much on the staff's magic. If disarmed, you would be vulnerable. I can do magic without it, Harry protested. Just not as precisely. Show me. Harry handed prongs to Atreus and centered himself. Wandless magic, or staffless, in his case, was harder but not impossible. He'd learned that his original magical abilities worked on intention and emotion more than the structured runic system Atreus used. Focusing on a fallen log, Harry extended his hand and visualized it rising. The log trembled, then slowly lifted 2 feet off the ground. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he held it there. Higher, Kratos demanded. Harry strained, pushing more power into the effort. The log rose another foot before his control slipped and it crashed down. Your raw power grows, but your control without the focus remains weak, Kratos observed. This is dangerous. I'm trying, Harry said, frustration evident. Do not try. Do. Kratos's favorite phrase still had the power to both irritate and motivate Harry. Again. This time, smaller object, greater precision. For the next hour, Harry practiced manipulating various objects without his staff, lifting them, moving them in specific patterns, even changing their properties when he could manage it. By the end, he was exhausted but had demonstrated measurable improvement. Better, Kratos acknowledged, which from him was significant praise. Now, with the staff. Atreus handed prongs back, and Harry immediately felt the connection re-establish, the heart stone vibrating slightly against his palm, the runes responding to his touch. With the staff, his magic flowed naturally, the two systems merging seamlessly. They were deep into a more complex exercise when Harry suddenly froze, staff half raised. Someone's coming, he said quietly. Kratos and Atreus immediately went on alert, sensing nothing themselves but trusting Harry's magical sensitivity. Where? Kratos asked, Leviathan axe already in hand. Harry pointed toward the forest's edge. There. It feels strange. Not like anything from Midgard. A moment later, the air seemed to ripple, and a figure stepped through what appeared to be a tear in reality itself, similar to the one Kratos and Atreus had followed to Godric's hollow all those years ago. The newcomer wore long, flowing robes of deep blue. He was tall and thin, with a neatly trimmed beard and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. In his hand, he held what Harry instantly recognized from his dreams, a wand. Harry Potter, the man said, his voice carrying easily across the clearing. After all this time. Kratos moved to stand between Harry and the stranger, axe raised. Who are you? My name is Augustus Rookwood, and I've come a very long way to find the boy. The man's eyes never left Harry. The wizarding world has been searching for you for 12 years, child. Harry felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. The stranger knew his original name, the one Kratos and Atreus rarely used, preferring to call him simply Harry, or, in Kratos's case, often just boy. What do you want? Atreus demanded, bow now in hand with an arrow nocked. Merely to speak with the boy, Rookwood said, smiling in a way that didn't reach his eyes. To tell him of his heritage, his famous parents, the destiny that awaits him in his true home. My home is here, Harry said firmly, stepping up beside Kratos despite the god of war's attempt to keep him back. With my family. Rookwood's smile faltered. Your family. These creatures are not your family, Harry. You are a wizard, one of the most potentially powerful our world has ever known. You belong with your own kind. How did you find us? Kratos growled. Ah, now that is quite the tale. Rookwood twirled his wand casually, but Harry noticed how his eyes tracked every movement Kratos made. For years, the Ministry detected unusual magical outbursts but couldn't locate their source. Then, recently, something changed. Your magic, young Harry, has been reaching out, calling across the void between worlds. Harry unconsciously touched his scar. I haven't been calling anyone. Perhaps not consciously, Rookwood conceded. But magic, especially magic touched by destiny, has ways of making itself known. The lightning that courses through you leaves traces. You will leave, Kratos stated flatly. Now. Rookwood sighed dramatically. I had hoped we could be civilized about this, but I see subtlety is wasted here. His demeanor changed, sharpening. The boy comes with me, willingly or otherwise. What happened next unfolded so quickly that Harry barely had time to react. Rookwood flicked his wand, sending a jet of red light toward Kratos. Simultaneously, creatures began emerging from the tear in reality, not humans, but grotesque beings with gray skin and spindly limbs. Inferi. Rookwood called out. Secure the boy. Harry had never seen such creatures before, but Kratos and Atreus reacted instantly. The Leviathan axe flew true, embedding itself in the chest of the nearest creature, while Atreus's arrows found their marks with unerring accuracy. Harry, defensive position. Kratos shouted, recalling his axe. Training took over. Harry raised prongs, channeling power through the runes carved along its length. A barrier of shimmering energy formed around him just as one of the Inferi lunged, its desiccated hands bouncing harmlessly off the shield. Rookwood turned his attention to Harry, wand moving in complex patterns. Impressive magic for one so young and untrained. But let's see how you handle this, Confringo. A blast of pure force slammed into Harry's shield. The barrier held, but Harry felt the impact reverberate through his staff and into his arms. The heart stone at Prong's tip flared bright green in response. My turn, Harry muttered. He'd been practicing a new technique, combining the lightning of the storm giant's heart with runic patterns for amplification. Dropping to one knee for stability, Harry drove the base of his staff into the ground and channeled power upward through the shaft. The runes illuminated in sequence as the magic built. When it reached the heart stone, Harry released it with a shout. A bolt of green-tinged lightning erupted from the staff, forking midair to strike both Rookwood and the tear in reality behind him. Rookwood barely managed to raise a shield of his own, the impact still driving him to his knees. The tear, however, reacted violently, expanding, contracting, and then collapsing with a thunderclap that knocked everyone in the clearing off their feet. When Harry's vision cleared, the tear was gone, as were most of the Inferi. Rookwood remained, looking considerably less composed as he climbed back to his feet. So the rumors of your power weren't exaggerated after all, he said, breathing heavily. Good. He will be pleased. Who will be pleased? Harry demanded, readying another attack. Rookwood's eyes flicked to Harry's scar. The one who gave you that mark, of course. The one whose power flows in your veins, whether you know it or not. Before anyone could respond, Kratos charged forward, axe raised. Rookwood disapparated with a loud crack, reappearing 20 feet away. This isn't over, Harry Potter, the wizard called. You belong to our world, and to him. We will return for you. With another crack, Rookwood vanished completely, leaving behind only the few remaining Inferi, which Kratos and Atreus quickly dispatched. In the sudden silence, Harry lowered his staff, hands trembling slightly from both exertion and shock. What was that? Atreus asked, retrieving arrows from the fallen creatures. A wizard, Harry said quietly. From my original world. Kratos approached, studying Harry intently. Your scar is glowing again. Harry touched it reflexively. The pain had returned, sharper than before. He said someone gave me this mark. Someone whose power is in my veins. He spoke to manipulate you, Kratos said firmly. To create doubt. But what if he's right? Harry looked between Kratos and Atreus. What if there's something inside me that doesn't belong? Something dangerous? Atreus placed a hand on Harry's shoulder. If there is, we'll face it together. Like we always do. Kratos nodded once, but his expression remained troubled. We must consult Mimir. This magic is beyond even my experience. They found Mimir where they'd left him, hanging from a branch near their cabin, eyes closed in what passed for sleep for the disembodied head. Wake up, Kratos commanded. Mimir's eyes snapped open. Well, good morning to you too, brother. Lovely day for, he stopped, noticing their expressions. What's happened? Harry quickly recounted their encounter with Rookwood and the Inferi, including the wizard's cryptic comments about Harry's scar and the power within him. Show me the mark, lad, Mimir requested once Harry finished. Harry stepped closer, bending down so Mimir could see the lightning-shaped scar on his forehead. It had faded over the years to a thin silver line, but now glowed faintly with that same green energy. Mimir mused. I've seen many magical workings in my time, but this is different. Not Norse, certainly. Can you tell what it is? Atreus asked. Not precisely, but I have suspicions. Mimir's eyes narrowed. There are magics in some realms that deal with the soul, splitting it, binding it, transferring pieces of it. Nasty business, generally speaking. Harry felt a chill. Are you saying there's a piece of someone else's soul in me? I'm saying it's possible, Mimir clarified. This green energy, it doesn't feel like it belongs to you, lad. It feels parasitic. How do we remove it? Kratos demanded. Mimir winced. That's the tricky part. Soul magic isn't my expertise. In the Norse realms, such things would typically fall under Freya's domain. Kratos's expression darkened at the mention of Freya. Their history was complicated at best, openly hostile at worst. Is there no alternative? He asked. Not that I'm aware of, Mimir said. Freya's knowledge of magical bindings is unparalleled. If anyone in Midgard can help the boy, it's her. Harry looked up at Kratos. We have to try. If there's something inside me, something that might hurt you or Atreus, I need to know. Kratos met his gaze, seeing the determination there. After a moment, he nodded once. We will seek Freya's counsel. But we approach with caution. And weapons, Atreus added grimly. The journey to Freya's dwelling took them across territories still recovering from the events years before. Kratos remained vigilant, clearly expecting trouble not just from potential enemies but from Freya herself. As they traveled, Harry felt the pain in his scar fluctuating, sometimes fading entirely, other times flaring so sharply he had to stop and wait for it to subside. Each episode left him more convinced that Mimir's theory was correct. Something lived within the scar, something separate from him but increasingly active. We're close, Atreus announced as they entered a lush forest area that seemed vibrant compared to the surrounding landscape. Her magic remained strong here, Kratos observed. Harry felt it too, a different kind of energy from the Norse runes he'd studied or his own innate abilities. More organic somehow, connected to the earth and growing things. They found Freya in a garden outside her home, kneeling among plants Harry didn't recognize. She looked up as they approached, her expression shifting from surprise to wariness. Kratos, she said coolly. And Atreus. I had not expected to see either of you again. Her eyes landed on Harry, narrowing slightly. And who is this? Not yours by blood, clearly, yet he carries power. His name is Harry, Atreus said. We've raised him since he was a baby. Freya stood gracefully, brushing dirt from her hands. And why have you brought him to me? Surely not for a social visit. The boy has a mark, Kratos said bluntly. Mimir believes it contains soul magic beyond his knowledge. Interest flickered in Freya's eyes. Soul magic? That is indeed a serious matter. She approached Harry, stopping a respectful distance away. May I see this mark? Harry glanced at Kratos, who nodded once. Stepping forward, Harry pushed back his unruly hair to reveal the lightning scar. Freya's reaction was immediate and alarming. She jerked backward as if struck, her face paling. Where did you find this child? Another realm, Atreus explained. His parents had been killed by some kind of dark wizard. We took him before their people could claim him. You have no idea what you've done, Freya whispered. She composed herself with visible effort. That is no ordinary mark. It is a container, a vessel for something that should not exist outside its original host. A soul fragment, Harry said, Mimir's words confirmed. Freya nodded grimly. Yes. And not just any soul, but one corrupted by the darkest of magics. I can sense its malevolence from here. Can you remove it? Kratos asked, getting straight to the point. Freya's eyes met Harry's. Perhaps. But it would be neither easy nor painless. The fragment has been with you how long? 12 years, Harry answered. Then it has had time to entwine itself with your own essence. Separating the two. She trailed off. Would be dangerous, Kratos finished for her. Yes. Freya moved back toward her garden, gesturing for them to follow. But leaving it may prove more dangerous still. The fragment appears to be awakening, reaching out. Perhaps responding to something in its original realm. A wizard found us today, Harry said. He talked about someone who gave me this mark, someone whose power is in my veins. Freya's expression grew grave. Then it is as I feared. The original owner of this soul piece still exists and seeks to reclaim what was lost. She began gathering plants from her garden, selecting specific leaves and roots. I will need time to prepare. And I must warn you, what I attempt may fail, or worse, may free the fragment entirely. Do it, Harry said firmly. Kratos placed a hand on Harry's shoulder. We will consider all options before deciding. There is no time for deliberation, Freya countered. Look at the boy's scar now. Harry couldn't see it, but from Atreus's sharp intake of breath, he knew the glow must have intensified. The connection strengthens, Freya continued. Soon, the original owner may be able to influence the boy, perhaps even possess him. How long to prepare your ritual? Kratos asked. By nightfall, Freya answered. But I require one thing you may be reluctant to provide. What? A sample of the boy's blood. Freely given. Harry nodded immediately. Take what you need. Harry, Atreus began. It's my choice, Harry interrupted. My blood, my scar, my problem. Kratos studied him for a long moment before nodding once. The boy decides. Freya produced a small silver knife, its edge gleaming in the sunlight. 3 drops only, into this. She held out a small wooden bowl containing some kind of cloudy liquid. Harry took the knife without hesitation and made a small cut on his palm. 3 drops of blood fell into the bowl, causing the liquid to swirl and turn a deep crimson. Well done, Freya said, taking back the knife and bowl. Now I must work. You may rest here, but do not disturb me until sunset. As she disappeared into her dwelling, Atreus turned to Harry. Are you sure about this? Harry nodded, eyes on the horizon. Whatever's inside me, I want it gone. Before it can hurt either of you. You think only of others, Kratos observed. But consider yourself as well. Freya's magic may carry a price. Some prices are worth paying, Harry said quietly. They waited through the day, Harry using the time to practice his control exercises while Kratos and Atreus took turns keeping watch. As sunset approached, the pain in Harry's scar grew steadily worse, pulsing in time with his heartbeat. It knows, he said grimly. Whatever's in there, it knows we're trying to get rid of it. Freya emerged from her dwelling as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. She looked weary but determined, carrying a stone basin inscribed with runes Harry didn't recognize. "It is prepared," she announced. "But I must warn you one final time, this ritual will cause great pain, and success is not guaranteed." "I understand," Harry said. Freya set the basin down in the center of a circular area she'd prepared, surrounded by strange symbols drawn in what looked like luminescent paint. "Stand in the center, over the basin." Harry moved into position, prongs clutched tightly in his hand. "You must leave the staff outside the circle," Freya instructed. Harry hesitated. "It helps me control my magic. And that is precisely why it must remain apart. Your magic must be free to fight the intrusion." Reluctantly, Harry handed prongs to Atreus, immediately feeling more vulnerable without it. "Now, kneel and place your hands on either side of the basin," Freya directed. "When I begin the ritual, you must focus on the boundary between yourself and the fragment. Visualize a line where you end and it begins." Harry knelt as instructed. "How will I know the difference?" "You will know," Freya said grimly. "The fragment will fight to survive. It will show its true nature when threatened." Kratos moved closer to the circle's edge. "If the boy is endangered, do not interfere once we begin," Freya cut him off sharply. Breaking the ritual could be fatal. Harry looked up at Kratos. "I'll be fine. I've trained for this my whole life, right? Control under pressure." A ghost of what might have been pride flickered across Kratos's face. "Remember your training." Freya began chanting in a language Harry didn't understand, pouring the crimson mixture from earlier into the basin. The liquid didn't settle but continued to swirl, glowing with the same eerie green light as Harry's scar. As the chant intensified, Harry felt the scar begin to burn, not the usual ache but a searing, white-hot pain that made his eyes water. He gritted his teeth, maintaining his position as Freya had instructed. "Focus, Harry," Freya called over her chanting. "Find the boundary." Harry closed his eyes, trying to mentally map his own consciousness. At first, there seemed to be nothing separate, nothing foreign. Then, as the pain peaked, he felt it, a presence, slithering through his thoughts like a serpent. "I feel it," he gasped. "Push it toward the basin," Freya instructed. "Visualize it flowing out through your scar." Harry concentrated, imagining the foreign presence being drawn out through the lightning-shaped mark on his forehead. The pain intensified unbearably, but he held on, focused on his task. Something inside him resisted, a visceral, violent pushback against his efforts. Images flashed through his mind, a pale, snake-like face, a high, cold laugh, a woman pleading, "Not Harry, please not Harry." "It's fighting back," he managed through clenched teeth. "Of course it fights," Freya replied, her own voice strained with effort. "It has tasted life through you for 12 years. It will not relinquish such a gift easily." The presence in Harry's mind seemed to realize what was happening. It lashed out, sending waves of agony through his entire body. Harry screamed despite his best efforts not to, his back arching involuntarily. "Harry!" Atreus shouted, taking a step forward only to be blocked by Kratos's outstretched arm. "Wait," the god of war commanded, though Harry could hear the tension in his voice. The basin between Harry's hands began to fill with what looked like black smoke, swirling with that same sickly green energy. As it emerged, Harry could feel it pulling, not just away from him but trying to drag parts of him along with it. "It's taking something from me," he gasped. "Your magic is entangled with it," Freya explained, her chanting never ceasing. "You must let go of what cannot be separated, or it will drag you down with it." Letting go had never been Harry's strength. Kratos had taught him to hold firm, to endure, to push through pain. But now, survival meant the opposite, releasing his grasp on something that had been part of him since before he could remember. "I can't, you can," Kratos's voice cut through his doubt. "Your power is yours, not his." Remember who you are. Harry of Midgard. Son of Kratos and Atreus, not just by blood but by choice. Master of two magics, forger of his own path. With a final, tremendous effort, Harry visualized severing the connections between himself and the invading presence. The pain peaked, a scream tearing from his throat as the black smoke fully emerged from his scar, coalescing in the basin into a roiling mass. Freya's chanting reached a crescendo. She flung something into the basin, a powder that ignited on contact with the smoke. Green flames erupted, temporarily blinding everyone in the clearing. When Harry could see again, the basin contained nothing but ash, and his scar, for the first time in memory, was cool to the touch. "Is it gone?" he asked, voice raw. Freya nodded, visibly exhausted. "The fragment is destroyed. But not without cost." Harry tried to stand and immediately collapsed. Kratos was there in an instant, catching him before he hit the ground. "What has happened to him?" he demanded of Freya. "The separation was not clean," she explained, leaning heavily on her staff. "Some of his magical essence was too thoroughly entwined with the fragment. He will recover, but his power may be altered." "Altered how?" Atreus asked, handing prongs back to Harry, who clutched it gratefully. "That remains to be seen," Freya said. "Magic finds its own balance in time." Harry felt different, lighter in some ways, but also as if something familiar had been stripped away. The heart stone in his staff pulsed reassuringly against his palm, but the connection seemed changed somehow. "Rest now," Freya advised. "Your body and magic need time to heal." Harry slept deeply that night, his dreams free of the green light and screaming for the first time in years. He woke to find Kratos keeping silent vigil nearby, while Atreus and Freya spoke in low voices just outside the small shelter where they'd placed him. "How do you feel?" Kratos asked, noticing he was awake. Harry took a moment to assess. "Different. But better, I think. The scar doesn't hurt anymore." He reached for prongs, which had been placed beside his makeshift bed. The heart stone glowed at his touch, but the response seemed muted compared to before. "Try a simple spell," Kratos suggested. Harry pointed the staff at a small stone on the ground, intending to lift it as he'd done countless times before. The stone twitched but didn't rise. Frowning, Harry concentrated harder. This time the stone rose shakily a few inches before dropping again. "My control is off," he murmured. "Freya warned your magic might be altered," Kratos reminded him. "You will adapt. You always do." Harry nodded, but the loss of his finely tuned control was disheartening. He'd worked so hard to master the blend of his innate abilities and Norse runic magic. Atreus entered, looking relieved to find Harry awake. "Freya says you should try to eat something. Build your strength back up." "What else did she say about my magic?" Harry asked directly. Atreus hesitated. She thinks the fragment might have been amplifying certain aspects of your power. Especially anything related to destruction or control. So I'm weaker now." "Different," Atreus corrected. "She says your magic might actually develop in new directions without the fragment's influence." Harry wasn't sure if that was meant to be comforting. He'd spent years honing his skills, and now he'd have to start over in some ways. "There's one way to find out what's changed," he said, pushing himself upright. "I need to practice." "You should rest," Atreus began. "I've rested enough," Harry cut him off, more sharply than he intended. "Sorry. I need to know what I'm dealing with." Kratos nodded once. "A wise approach. Face the challenge directly." Outside, Freya was tending her garden again, though she looked up as Harry emerged. "The ritual took much from you. Do not push yourself too quickly." "I need to understand what's left," Harry replied. For the next hour, Harry worked through a series of increasingly complex magical exercises, with Kratos, Atreus, and occasionally Freya offering guidance. The results were mixed. His raw power seemed diminished, particularly when it came to the lightning-based attacks that had been his specialty. However, other abilities, especially those related to defense and healing, seemed strangely enhanced. "It's like I've traded offensive power for defensive," Harry observed, examining a shield he'd conjured that was stronger than any he'd produced before. "Perhaps not traded, but rebalanced," Freya suggested. "The fragment's nature was destructive. Without its influence, your true affinity may emerge." "But the lightning, that came from the heart stone, not the fragment," Harry argued. Freya shook her head. "Magic responds to the wielder's nature. The heart stone channeled what was strongest in you, which, until yesterday, included the fragment's power." Harry frowned, unconvinced. He'd always thought of his lightning abilities as uniquely his, the thing that made him Harry of Midgard rather than just the orphan from another realm. "Try something new," Atreus suggested. "Something you've never attempted before." Harry considered, then pointed prongs at a nearby pool of water. Instead of trying to manipulate the water directly, he focused on the boundary between water and air, the surface tension that held the liquid together. In his mind, he envisioned that boundary strengthening, solidifying. To his surprise, the surface of the water hardened into something that looked like ice but wasn't cold. He tapped it with prongs, and it rang like glass. "Transformation magic," Freya observed. "Changing the essential nature of an element without altering its base composition." "Interesting." Harry stared at what he'd created. "I never could do that before." "Perhaps you never tried," Kratos suggested. "Or perhaps the fragment's dominance prevented it," Freya added. "Some magics are naturally opposed." Harry spent the rest of the day exploring these new magical tendencies. By sunset, he discovered several abilities that seemed enhanced or entirely new: stronger shields, finer control over transformation magic, and a surprising aptitude for healing small wounds and ailments. What remained diminished was the raw destructive power he'd relied on in combat. "I'll need to change how I fight," he realized, sitting exhausted but thoughtful as they prepared to depart Freya's dwelling the following morning. "Adaptation is survival," Kratos stated. "You will find new strengths." Freya approached, holding a small leather pouch. "For you," she said, offering it to Harry. "Herbs to help restore magical balance. Brew them as tea each night for a week." "Thank you," Harry said sincerely. "For everything." Freya's expression softened slightly. "You bear a great burden for one so young. Made greater by the choices of those who should have protected you." "Kratos and Atreus have always protected me," Harry said firmly. A sad smile touched Freya's lips. "Yes, I believe they have." She glanced at Kratos. "Perhaps there is hope for you yet, god of war." Kratos merely grunted in response, but Harry caught the slight relaxation in his posture. Whatever complicated history existed between Kratos and Freya, this interaction had eased some of the tension. "The wizard who found you will return," Freya warned as they prepared to leave. "And others may follow. The fragment is gone, but your connection to that other realm remains. They will sense it, especially now that your magic is in flux." "Let them come," Kratos said grimly. "They will find us ready." The journey home was uneventful, giving Harry time to reflect on the changes to his magic. By the time they reached their cabin, he'd begun to develop new fighting techniques that played to his altered strengths: shields that could be weaponized by sudden expansion, transformation magic that could change the battlefield itself. "You're adapting quickly," Atreus observed as they sparred 3 days after returning home. Harry ducked under a swipe of Atreus's blade, simultaneously using prongs to transform the ground beneath his brother's feet from solid earth to loose sand. As Atreus's footing destabilized, Harry swept his legs, bringing him down. "Had to," Harry replied, offering a hand to help Atreus up. "Can't rely on just blasting everything anymore." "It's smarter fighting," Kratos commented from where he observed. "More strategic." Harry nodded, though he couldn't help missing the raw power of his lightning attacks. The heart stone still channeled some electrical energy, but nothing like the devastating bolts he'd once commanded. That night, as they ate dinner, Mimir asked the question Harry had been avoiding. So what happens when the next wizard comes calling? They'll be expecting the Harry who could blast an ogre to ash, not this new, subtler version. I've been thinking about that, Harry admitted. I need something new, a way to channel what power I have left more effectively. Your staff serves well enough, Kratos said. It was designed for my old magic, Harry pointed out. The heart stone was chosen specifically to amplify lightning abilities. But that's not my strength anymore. So what are you suggesting? Atreus asked. Harry hesitated, then plunged ahead. I want to craft a new focus. Something designed specifically for my magic as it is now, not as it was. The dwarves could help, Atreus suggested. No, Harry shook his head. This is something I need to do myself. To really understand my magic, I need to create the tool that channels it. Kratos studied him thoughtfully before nodding once. A worthy challenge. What do you require? Materials mostly. And maybe some guidance from Atreus on runic inscriptions. Over the following weeks, Harry collected what he needed: wood from an ash tree struck by lightning but not killed, silver from a stream near where they'd once encountered light elves, stones with natural runic patterns from deep in the mountains. Each component was selected not just for its magical properties but for its resonance with Harry's adjusted abilities. The crafting process was slow and deliberate. Harry spent hours carving the wood, polishing the silver, setting the stones precisely where they would best channel specific types of magic. Atreus helped with the runic inscriptions, teaching Harry the symbols for protection, transformation, and healing, the areas where his magic now seemed strongest. What about the heart stone? Atreus asked as they worked. Will you transfer it to the new staff? Harry considered the green crystal that had been with him since he was 7. No. It's tied to the old staff, to my old magic. This needs something different. Like what? Instead of answering directly, Harry reached into a small pouch and removed a curious object, a fragment of mirror he'd found in the ruins of Freya's ritual basin. Though small, it seemed to capture and reflect light in unusual ways. Is that? Atreus started. A piece of the basin that held the fragment, yes, Harry confirmed. Freya said it absorbed some of the energy during the ritual. Not the fragment itself, he added quickly, seeing Kratos' alarmed expression from across the room, but the process of separation. It holds the memory of division and reintegration. Are you certain it's safe? Kratos asked. Freya checked it before we left, Harry assured him. It contains no darkness, just the echo of transformation. The final step came on the night of Harry's 13th birthday, not his actual birth date, which remained unknown, but the anniversary of when Kratos and Atreus had found him. Under a clear, star-filled sky, Harry completed the new staff. Unlike prongs, which had been straight and topped with the heart stone, this staff curved slightly, with the mirror fragment embedded in a silver setting near the top. Runes spiraled along its length, but instead of being carved into the wood, they were inlaid with thin silver wire, creating channels for magic to flow rather than fixed instructions. It needs a name, Atreus said as they admired the finished product. Harry ran his fingers along the smooth ash wood, feeling the magic responding to his touch, different from the heart stone's eager pulse, more like a conversation than a command. Hedwig, he said, the name coming to him suddenly. It means, refuge in battle. A good name, Kratos approved. Now you must test it. They moved to the clearing where they typically trained. Harry took a deep breath, centering himself before attempting to channel magic through Hedwig for the first time. Unlike his first staff, which had responded with immediate, almost explosive energy, Hedwig's response was subtle but profound. As Harry focused, the runes began to glow softly, silver light flowing along the inlaid channels. The mirror fragment at the top didn't shine but rather seemed to deepen, as if opening a window to somewhere else. Harry aimed at a fallen log and focused on transformation, not destruction. The magic flowed differently, more like water finding its path than lightning striking. The log didn't explode or rise, instead, it transformed, would becoming flexible as leather then hardening again into a perfect sphere. Precise control, Atreus observed. Much finer than before. Next, Harry tested defensive magic, creating a shield. Instead of the visible barrier he'd previously conjured, this protection manifested as a subtle distortion in the air, bending light and energy around him rather than blocking it directly. Interesting, Kratos commented. Less visible, but perhaps more effective. Finally, Harry attempted something he'd never been able to do before, connecting to the living energy around him. Pointing Hedwig at a patch of bare earth, he focused on growth and renewal. Tiny green shoots appeared, growing visibly into wildflowers that shouldn't have bloomed until spring. Life magic, Atreus breathed. That's new. Harry lowered the staff, surprised but pleased. It's like Hedwig knows what I need before I do. The staff doesn't know, Kratos corrected. You do. It merely responds to your true nature, unclouded by the fragment. Over the next few days, Harry continued exploring Hedwig's capabilities, finding that while his raw power remained diminished, his precision and versatility had increased dramatically. He could maintain multiple spells simultaneously, layer effects in complex patterns, and achieve results with subtle finesse rather than brute force. You realize what this means, Mimir commented after watching a particularly impressive display of transformation magic. You're becoming less like a traditional combat mage and more like a wizard, Harry finished. From my original realm. Yes, Mimir agreed. Though with a Norse twist, of course. It's fascinating, really, as if your inherent magical nature is finally expressing itself without interference. Harry wasn't sure how he felt about that. He'd spent years defining himself as Harry of Midgard, deliberately separating from his origins. Now his magic seemed to be pulling him back toward those roots. Don't look so troubled, lad, Mimir advised. You're still you, just more completely than before. A month after creating Hedwig, Harry's new magical approach faced its first real test. They were hunting in the eastern forests when Atreus suddenly raised a hand in warning. Something's coming, he whispered. Not Draugr. Something different. Harry felt it too, a cold sensation unlike anything he'd experienced in Midgard. The temperature around them dropped rapidly, frost forming on leaves despite the summer warmth. Prepare yourselves, Kratos ordered, drawing his weapons. From between the trees, dark figures emerged, tall, hooded forms that seemed to float rather than walk. As they approached, Harry felt a crushing despair settling over him, memories of his nightmares rising unbidden. What are they? He gasped, raising Hedwig instinctively. Not of Midgard, Kratos growled, though even he seemed affected by the creature's presence. One of the beings drifted toward Harry, a skeletal hand extending from beneath its tattered robe. As it drew closer, Harry heard screaming in his mind, a woman's voice, pleading. His mother's voice, he realized with sudden clarity. Get back, he shouted, channeling magic through Hedwig. Instead of the shield he'd intended, something entirely different emerged, a brilliant white light that took the form of a stag, charging directly at the creature. The hooded figure recoiled as if burned, retreating rapidly back into the trees. What was that? Atreus asked, staring at where the light had faded. Harry shook his head, equally surprised. I don't know. It just happened. Similar creatures were approaching from other directions. Kratos engaged one directly, his axe slicing through its robe but seeming to cause little damage. Atreus's arrows passed straight through another as if it were made of smoke. Our weapons are ineffective, Kratos called. Harry. Understanding immediately, Harry concentrated on the feeling that had produced the stag of light. Happiness, he realized, he'd instinctively focused on his happiest memories to counter the despair the creatures induced. Raising Hedwig again, he channeled that same emotion, memories of training with Kratos, hunting with Atreus, the moment they'd told him he was truly their family. The staff's mirror fragment seemed to magnify these feelings, projecting them outward as tangible force. This time, the white light formed a dome around all three of them. The creatures pressed against it but couldn't penetrate, their skeletal hands burning on contact with the barrier. "We need to move," Harry said through gritted teeth, the effort of maintaining the shield taxing his strength. "I don't know how long I can hold this." "This way," Atreus directed, leading them toward the lake. They moved as a unit, the protective dome advancing with them while the creatures circled, searching for weakness. By the time they reached the lakeshore, Harry was shaking with exertion. "Can't hold it much longer," he gasped. Kratos scanned their surroundings, tactical mind working. "The boat. They seem adverse to your light, perhaps water will provide additional barrier." They hurried toward their beached boat, the shield flickering as Harry's concentration wavered. Just as they reached it, the dome collapsed entirely, and the creatures surged forward. "Harry, get in!" Atreus shouted, firing arrows to little effect. But Harry had one more idea. Instead of trying to shield them all, he pointed Hedwig at the lake itself. Using his newfound affinity for transformation, he focused on the boundary between water and air, not hardening it as he'd done before, but charging it with the same energy that had formed the stag and dome. The entire surface of the lake began to glow with white light, rippling outward from where his magic touched it. The approaching creatures halted abruptly at the water's edge, seemingly unable or unwilling to cross the illuminated surface. "It's working," Atreus observed. "Let's go." They launched the boat quickly, Harry maintaining his connection to the water until they were well away from shore. The creatures remained at the edge of the lake, their dark forms stark against the glowing shoreline, before eventually drifting back into the forest. "What were those things?" Harry asked once they'd reached a safe distance. "I've never seen their like in any of the 9 realms," Kratos said. "They felt empty," Atreus added with a shudder. "Like they were trying to drain something from us." "Hope," Harry said quietly. "Joy." They were feeding on happiness itself. Kratos studied him intently. "You knew how to fight them." "How?" "I didn't know," Harry insisted. "It was instinct. They made me remember her. My birth mother." He touched his scar, which remained cool and dormant. "She was begging someone not to kill me. I heard her voice clearly for the first time." "And the light you conjured?" Atreus asked. "I just wanted them to stop making me remember that," Harry explained. "I focused on happy memories instead, real ones, with you both." The magic responded differently than I expected. Kratos nodded slowly. "These creatures may be from your original realm. Their appearance now, after the fragment was removed, cannot be coincidence," Harry finished grimly. "Rookwood said they'd be back for me." "The barriers between realms must be weakening," Atreus suggested. "First the wizard, now these creatures." "We should consult Mimir again," Kratos decided. "And be prepared for worse to come." Mimir confirmed their fears. The hooded creatures matched no known entity in Norse mythology, suggesting they had indeed crossed from the wizarding realm. "Dementors," Harry said suddenly, the word surfacing from somewhere deep in his subconscious. "That's what they're called." "How do you know that?" Atreus asked. Harry shook his head. "I just know. Like I knew about wands. It's like there are pieces of knowledge buried in my mind that surface when needed." "Remnants of your early life, perhaps," Mimir suggested. "Or magical knowledge that transfers with your inherent abilities." "Either way, these Dementors pose a serious threat," Kratos stated. "Conventional weapons are ineffective." "But Harry's light magic worked," Atreus pointed out. "That stag thing especially." "A Patronus," Harry murmured, another term emerging unbidden. "It's called a Patronus charm." "You're remembering more of your original magic," Mimir observed. "Interesting timing, considering the fragment's removal." Could the fragment have been suppressing these memories? Harry wondered. Possible, Mimir agreed. Or perhaps facing threats from your original world has triggered dormant knowledge. Whatever the explanation, Harry found himself incorporating these recovered techniques into his training. The Patronus charm became a regular part of his magical repertoire, and he discovered other spells seemingly locked in his subconscious: shields, disarming techniques, even simple healing magic. It's like learning a language I once knew but forgot, he explained to Atreus during practice. The words feel familiar even though I don't remember learning them. Can you teach any of it to me? Atreus asked. Harry tried, but they quickly discovered that Atreus's god-based magic operated on fundamentally different principles. He could learn the theory but couldn't execute wizarding spells the way Harry could. Different magical heritage, Mimir explained when consulted. Your abilities come from your godly bloodline and are tied to runes and the natural forces of the 9 realms. Harry's magic is internal, inherent to wizards of his kind. Despite this limitation, they developed new fighting techniques that combined their different abilities. Atreus would enhance his arrows with runic magic, and Harry would amplify or redirect them with Hedwig. Kratos incorporated their magical support into his combat strategies, creating a formidable 3-person unit. They needed every advantage. In the weeks following the Dementor encounter, more creatures from the wizarding world found their way to Midgard, strange, twisted beasts that seemed drawn to Harry's magical signature like moths to flame. They're getting bigger, Atreus observed after they defeated what Harry had identified as a chimera, a fire-breathing beast with the head of a lion, body of a goat, and tail of a serpent. And more dangerous, Kratos added, examining a burn on his arm from the creature's flames. Harry pointed Hedwig at the wound, channeling healing magic through the staff. The burn faded gradually, new skin forming over the damaged area. His healing abilities had improved dramatically with practice, becoming one of his most valuable skills. Something is definitely weakening the barriers between realms, Harry said, completing the healing. The question is it happening naturally, or is someone causing it? Someone, Kratos stated with certainty. These incursions are too targeted, too focused on finding you. Rookwood, Harry suggested. Or whoever he works for. The one who gave you the scar, Atreus remembered. Harry nodded grimly. Whoever that is, they haven't given up. And now that the fragment is gone, they seek to reclaim you directly, Kratos finished. That night, as Harry polished Hedwig by the fire, he found himself staring into the mirror fragment embedded in the staff. Unlike a normal mirror, it didn't reflect his face but seemed to show shifting images, too fast and blurred to identify clearly. Occasionally, he caught glimpses of places he'd never seen, a castle perched on a cliff, a street lined with strange shops, a hall filled with floating candles. What are you seeing? Atreus asked, noticing his intense focus. I'm not sure, Harry admitted. Places from the other realm, I think. It's like Hedwig is picking up echoes from there. Can you control it? See specific things? Harry shook his head. Not yet. But it's getting clearer. At first, it was just flashes of light and color. Now I can make out actual locations. Be cautious, Kratos warned from across the room. Such visions may be a trap, a way for your enemies to locate you. Or a way for me to locate them, Harry countered. Know your enemy, right? That's what you've always taught me. Kratos couldn't argue with his own lesson. Just ensure the connection flows only one way. I'll try, Harry promised, though in truth, he wasn't certain he could control it. The mirror fragment seemed to operate by its own rules, responding to his intentions but also to external forces he didn't fully understand. Over the next few days, Harry spent more time gazing into the mirror, trying to stabilize the images and understand what he was seeing. Gradually, patterns emerged, the vision seemed strongest at dawn and dusk, and certain emotions appeared to trigger specific locations. Then, one evening, everything changed. As Harry gazed into the mirror, the swirling images suddenly stabilized, showing a clear picture of a magnificent castle. But this time, he wasn't merely observing, he could hear voices. The barriers continue to weaken, someone was saying. Our agents report the boy has separated from the Dark Lord's soul fragment. Then he is vulnerable, replied another voice, high and cold, a voice Harry recognized from his nightmares. The connection remains, even without the Horcrux. Find him. Bring him to me. The vision shifted, showing a pale, snake-like face that made Harry's blood run cold. Though he'd never seen it clearly before, he knew instinctively who this was, the one who had killed his parents, the one who had given him the scar. Harry jerked back from the staff, breaking the connection. His heart pounded as the implications sank in. What is it? Atreus asked, alarmed by his reaction. I saw him, Harry said, voice shaking slightly. The dark wizard who's been looking for me. He called the fragment a Horcrux. He said the connection between us still exists even though it's gone. Kratos moved closer, expression grave. What else? He's sending people to find me. And he looks wrong. Not fully human. Harry described the snake-like appearance, the unnatural red eyes. A god? Atreus wondered. No, Harry shook his head. Something else. Something made, not born. That night, Harry had the most vivid dream yet, not the usual nightmare of green light and screaming, but something far more detailed. He saw the snake-faced man surrounded by followers in black robes and silver masks. They were performing a ritual around a cauldron of bubbling liquid, adding ingredients while chanting in Latin. Blood of the enemy, the snake-faced man was saying. We have it not. But blood of the vessel will serve until the boy himself is found. One of the robed figures stepped forward, removing his mask to reveal Rookwood's face. My lord, the tracking charms have narrowed his location. He's in a realm the Old Norse called Midgard. Then open the way wider, the snake man commanded. Send more than mere beasts this time. Harry woke with a gasp, his scar neither painful nor glowing but strangely warm. They're coming, he told Kratos and Atreus over breakfast. Not monsters this time. People. Wizards. Kratos took the news with characteristic stoicism. Then we prepare. Preparation meant increasing their already rigorous training schedule, stockpiling supplies, and establishing fallback positions in case they needed to abandon their home quickly. Harry focused on expanding his magical repertoire, particularly defensive and detection spells that might give them warning of approaching threats. A week passed with no sign of the promised invasion. Then another. Harry began to wonder if his dream had been just that, a dream rather than a vision. Then, on a clear autumn morning, the sky above their cabin split open. Not a small tear like before, but a massive rift that spanned the clearing, edges crackling with both green energy and Norse runic patterns. Someone had found a way to combine magical systems, forcing a permanent pathway between realms. Get ready, Kratos ordered, Leviathan axe already in hand. Figures began descending through the rift, wizards in black robes and silver masks, wands raised as they touched down on Midgard's soil. Harry counted 8 in total, forming a semicircle around the cabin's perimeter. Harry Potter, one called, voice magically amplified. Surrender yourself, and your adoptive family will be spared. Lies, Kratos muttered. Harry stepped forward, Hedwig gripped tightly. You know they're not just going to let you leave with me. Of course not, Atreus agreed, bow ready. So we do this the hard way. The battle that followed tested every skill Harry had developed over his young life. The wizards attacked with spells he'd never seen, jets of red light that Kratos barely dodged, green beams that left smoking craters where they struck, invisible forces that tried to tear Hedwig from Harry's grasp. Harry countered with his hybrid magic, using Hedwig to create shields that absorbed rather than deflected the wizards' attacks, then redirected the energy back at them. Atreus's runic arrows found gaps in the wizards' defenses, while Kratos engaged them directly, his godly speed and strength overwhelming those unprepared for physical combat. They're not used to fighting this way, Harry realized, ducking behind a shield as a barrage of spells struck it. They expect magical duels, not combined attacks. Using this insight, they adapted their strategy. Harry would create openings with broad defensive spells, allowing Atreus and Kratos to close distance or attack from unexpected angles. 3 wizards fell quickly to this approach, but the remaining 5 grew more cautious, maintaining distance and coordinating their spellcasting. "We need to close that rift," Atreus called, firing an arrow that a wizard deflected with a casual flick of his wand. More could come through. Harry studied the tear, noticing how its edges pulsed in rhythm with the wizard's spells. "I think their magic is sustaining it. If we can disrupt their concentration." "Leave that to me," Kratos growled. The god of war suddenly charged, moving with such speed that the wizards had no time to react. His axe cleaved through one wizard's shield charm, sending the man crashing into his companions. In the confusion that followed, Harry aimed Hedwig at the rift itself. Using his newfound affinity for transformation magic, he focused not on closing the tear but on changing its nature, altering the boundary between realms just as he'd learned to alter the boundary between water and air. The mirror fragment in Hedwig flared brilliantly, reflecting the rift's energy back upon itself. The tear began to contract, its edges no longer green but taking on the silver light characteristic of Harry's transformed magic. The wizards noticed too late, one shouting in alarm as his attempt to stabilize the rift only accelerated its collapse. "No," the lead wizard cried. "Hold it open. The Dark Lord commands it." But Harry's transformation magic had taken hold. The rift sealed with a thunderous sound, leaving only a faint silver line in the air that quickly faded to nothing. Cut off from their escape route and reinforcements, the remaining wizards fought desperately. One managed to strike Atreus with a spell that left angry red welts across his chest. Another sent a cutting curse at Kratos that would have beheaded a normal man but only opened a shallow gash on the god of war's neck. Harry felt rage building at seeing his family wounded. For a moment, he was tempted to abandon his new, more measured magical approach and return to the raw destructive power he'd wielded before the fragment's removal. But instead, he channeled that emotion differently. Planting Hedwig firmly in the ground, he drew on both his recovered wizarding knowledge and his years of Norse training. The staff's runes ignited in sequence, while the mirror fragment seemed to draw in light from the surrounding area. When Harry spoke, the words came naturally, as if he'd known them all his life. "Expecto Patronum." The silver stag erupted from Hedwig, larger and more solid than ever before. But instead of charging at a single target, it multiplied, splitting into a dozen identical forms that surrounded the remaining wizards. "Impossible," one of them gasped. "A corporeal Patronus at his age, and controlled like this." Harry directed the Patroni with his mind, not attacking directly but herding the wizards into a tight group where Kratos and Atreus could engage them more effectively. One by one, the remaining invaders fell, until only the leader remained. Cornered, the wizard removed his mask, revealing a face Harry didn't recognize, older than Rookwood, with a fanatical gleam in his eyes. "You fight for the wrong side, boy," he spat. "You belong with us, with him. The power in your veins is his gift to you." "I make my own gifts," Harry replied, directing a Patronus to stand between them. "And I've already removed his so-called gift from my scar." The wizard laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "You think it's so simple." The Horcrux was merely the most obvious connection. His magic flows in you from that night in Godric's hollow. When he rises fully, you will feel it. You will answer to it. Before Harry could respond, the wizard raised his wand to his own temple. "I will not return to the Dark Lord empty-handed. If I cannot bring you, I shall bring the knowledge of where to find you." A green light began to form at the wand's tip, the same sickly color that had haunted Harry's nightmares. Recognizing the deadly spell, Harry reacted instinctively. He thrust Hedwig forward, channeling magic through it, not in attack but in desperation to stop whatever the wizard intended. The spell that emerged wasn't one Harry had consciously chosen, a jet of red light that struck the wizard's wand hand, causing the green energy to dissipate harmlessly. The wizard stared in shock as his wand clattered to the ground. Expelliarmus, Harry identified, the spell name coming to him as naturally as breathing. The disarming charm. Kratos moved forward, axe raised to finish the threat, but before he could strike, the wizard produced a small object from within his robes, a tarnished silver key. Port key, Harry warned, recognizing another term from his recovered knowledge. He's escaping. Indeed, the moment the wizard touched the key, he vanished with a crack, leaving behind only his fallen wand. Is he gone for good? Atreus asked, clutching his injured chest. No, Harry said grimly. He's gone back to report. He picked up the abandoned wand, feeling a strange resonance with it despite it not being made for him. They know where we are now. And they'll be back with more. Kratos surveyed the damage to their home and the bodies of the fallen wizards. Then we will not be here when they return. That night, as Atreus slept, healing from his injuries thanks to Harry's magic, Kratos and Harry sat by the fire discussing their next move. We should seek Mimir's counsel about permanent protection against realm travel, Kratos suggested. Harry nodded, turning the captured wand over in his hands. Though it responded to his magic, it felt wrong somehow, like wearing someone else's armor. I've been thinking, he said after a long silence. About what that wizard said. About his Dark Lord and the connection between us. Words meant to unsettle you, Kratos dismissed. A battle tactic. Maybe, Harry conceded. But what if there's truth to it? The fragment is gone, but what if something of him does remain in me? In my magic? Kratos studied him thoughtfully. If it does, it is but a small part of a greater whole. A drop of poison in a lake does not make the lake poisonous. Unless the poison spreads, Harry countered. What if I'm changing? What if all these recovered memories, these spells I suddenly know, are simply who you always were? Kratos finished for him. The fragment is gone, boy. Freya confirmed it. What remains is you, Harry of Midgard, with both your innate magic and what you have learned here. Harry wanted to believe him, but doubt lingered. Then why do I keep seeing him in the mirror? Why can I hear his plans? Kratos had no immediate answer for that. Finally, he said, some connections are not easily broken. But a connection does not mean control. You have shown that today. Harry looked down at Hedwig, at the mirror fragment that now showed only ordinary reflections. I need to understand it better. All of it, who I was, who he is, why he's so determined to find me even after taking back the fragment of his soul. And to do that? Harry met Kratos's gaze steadily. I think we need to find someone who knows both worlds. Someone who can explain what a Horcrux really is, and what it means that I was one. Kratos nodded slowly. The wizard's wand. Can you use it to track its original owner? Maybe, Harry said, surprised by the suggestion. If I can figure out how. Do so, Kratos decided. When he returns to his master, we will follow. Better to confront this threat directly than wait for it to grow stronger. It was a typically Kratos approach, direct, aggressive, proactive. And as Harry considered it, he found himself agreeing. He'd spent 12 years in Midgard, becoming something unique, neither fully of the wizarding world nor entirely of the Norse realms. Perhaps it was time to embrace that duality, to use his connection to both worlds as a weapon rather than seeing it as a vulnerability. We'll need to prepare carefully, Harry said, plans already forming in his mind. And I'll need to master more of my recovered magic. The disarming charm worked today, but there's more I need to remember. Then that is what we shall do, Kratos stated with finality. Prepare. Train. And when the time comes, we will find this Dark Lord and end his threat permanently. Harry nodded, a sense of purpose settling over him. The mirror fragment in Hedwig caught the firelight, briefly showing a reflection that wasn't the cabin, a flash of that snake-like face, now looking directly at him as if aware of being observed. Harry didn't flinch away this time but stared back defiantly. "I'm coming for you," he whispered to the vision. "Not as your Horcrux. Not as your victim. But as Harry of Midgard, son of Kratos and Atreus. And when I find you, you'll wish you'd never given me this scar." The face in the mirror dissolved into swirling mist, but not before Harry caught a glimpse of something unexpected, a flicker of fear in those inhuman red eyes. Chapter 3, Lightning Bearer. 3 years passed like water flowing down a mountain, steadily, relentlessly, carving new paths along the way. Harry, now 15, had grown both in stature and in power, though he remained lean rather than bulky like Kratos. His black hair still refused to be tamed, and the lightning scar on his forehead, while faded, occasionally tingled, a reminder of connections not fully broken. The family had moved twice since the wizard attack, each new location more remote than the last. Their current home sat nestled between towering mountains and dense forests, with only one narrow path leading to it, defensible, isolated, and carefully warded with both Norse runes and the protective enchantments Harry had recovered from his subconscious. Dawn broke over the peaks as Harry faced Atreus in their daily sparring session. Now 25, Atreus had fully come into his power as Loki, god of mischief, though he rarely used that name. "You're getting predictable," Atreus taunted as Harry deflected an arrow with Hedwig. "Am I?" Harry grinned. Without warning, he transformed the ground beneath Atreus into quicksand, simultaneously creating 3 illusory copies of himself that attacked from different angles. Atreus laughed, leaping from the trap with godly agility. "Okay, not that predictable." From his position observing the match, Kratos grunted in approval. He'd become more sparing with his words over the years, if that were possible, but his eyes missed nothing. Harry had abandoned the captured wizard's wand years ago, finding it resistant to his hybrid style of magic. Hedwig remained his primary focus, though he'd modified it extensively. The mirror fragment no longer showed random visions but responded to his will, allowing him to scry across realms when needed. The silver inlays had been expanded into a complex network that channeled his magic with incredible precision. The duel intensified, Atreus switching from bow to blades as he closed distance. Harry met him with a combination of spells, not the raw lightning blasts of his youth but tightly controlled magic that served multiple purposes simultaneously. A shield charm that also reflected light to blind his opponent, a levitation spell that lifted not just objects but the air itself, creating localized windstorms. "Enough," Kratos called after several minutes. "Atreus, your left side remains exposed when you shift stance. Harry, your casting takes too long when you combine effects." Both nodded, accepting the criticism without complaint. Years of Kratos' training had taught them that improvement came only through acknowledging weaknesses. "Something's coming," Harry said suddenly, turning toward the forest. "Something big." Kratos and Atreus immediately tensed, weapons ready. Harry's magical sensitivity had saved them numerous times over the years, providing early warning of approaching threats. "What do you sense?" Kratos asked. Harry frowned, concentrating. "Cold. Like the Dementors but different. More focused." He pointed Hedwig toward the trees, its mirror fragments swirling with mist. "There." A massive creature emerged from the forest, 12 feet tall, blue-skinned, with a single eye in the center of its brutish face. Its breath frosted the air around it, and ice formed where its feet touched the ground. "Frost giant?" Atreus guessed, though it looked different from any they'd encountered before. "No," Harry shook his head. "It's from the wizarding world. I can feel it." The creature roared, smashing a massive club against the ground. Ice spread outward in a shockwave, forcing them to leap aside. "Whatever it is, it bleeds," Kratos growled, launching himself forward with the Leviathan axe raised. The battle was brief but intense. The creature, which Harry eventually identified as a troll, though unlike any in Norse mythology, possessed both tremendous strength and a resilience to magic. Kratos' axe bit deep but didn't fell it immediately. Atreus's arrows, even enhanced with runic magic, merely angered it. Harry circled, analyzing its movements. Each time the troll's club struck, the ice pattern expanded. Not random destruction, he realized, but a specific effect, as if the creature was trying to cover the area in magical ice. It's not just attacking, he called to the others. It's transforming our territory. Making it hospitable for something else. Understanding the threat, Kratos changed tactics, focusing on disabling rather than killing. He severed one of the troll's legs with a mighty swing, dropping the creature to its knee. Atreus targeted its single eye with a precision shot, temporarily blinding it. Harry seized the opportunity, channeling transformation magic through Hedwig. Rather than attacking the troll directly, he targeted the ice it had created, converting the magical frost back into ordinary water. The troll howled in apparent distress as its work was undone. It's vulnerable to heat, Harry realized. Atreus. Fire arrows. Atreus quickly switched to flame-enchanted arrows, each shot hissing as it struck the troll's thick hide. Kratos, seeing the strategy, engaged at close range, forcing the creature to focus on him while Atreus and Harry attacked from distance. Finally, with a gurgling roar, the troll collapsed. Its body began to dissolve, not into the golden dust of Norse creatures but into a blue mist that dissipated on the wind. What was that about? Atreus asked, retrieving salvageable arrows. A scout, Harry said grimly. Or worse, advance preparation. He knelt, examining remnants of the magical ice that hadn't fully melted. It was changing our environment, making it more like wherever it came from. Kratos scowled. The barriers between realms grow weaker. This had been their reality for 3 years, creatures from the wizarding world appearing with increasing frequency in Midgard. What began as isolated incidents had become almost routine. Dementors haunted the forests. Hippogriffs nested in the mountains. A small herd of unicorns had even established territory near the lake to the west. More concerning were the aggressive incursions, trolls, acromantulas, and once even a dragon that had taken Kratos, Atreus, and Harry working in perfect coordination to drive off. We should check the wards, Harry suggested, already moving toward the perimeter they'd established around their home. The protective boundary consisted of both physical markers, rune stones carved by Atreus, and magical enchantments cast by Harry. The combination had proven effective against most intrusions, but each new type of creature presented unique challenges. There, Harry pointed to a section where the runes had dimmed significantly. Something drained the power. Atreus examined the stones. These were full strength yesterday. Whatever that troll was doing, it affected more than just the ground. Harry placed his hand on the nearest stone, channeling magic to recharge it. The runes flickered but didn't fully illuminate. Something's blocking it. Kratos knelt, examining the earth around the stone. The ground has changed. It resists the runes. This was new and concerning. Previous incursions had been straightforward, creatures entering their realm, causing trouble, being dealt with. This systematic undermining of their defenses suggested greater intelligence behind the attacks. We need to consult Mimir, Atreus decided. And maybe Brock and Sindri. If the very fabric of Midgard is being altered. Harry nodded, casting a temporary ward to reinforce the weakened section. I'll strengthen all the perimeter points. You two check the other vulnerable areas. As they separated, Harry couldn't shake a growing sense of dread. The mirror fragment in Hedwig had been showing more frequent visions from the wizarding world, glimpses of hooded figures, whispered conversations about the plan advancing, and occasional flashes of that snake-like face that still haunted his dreams. Something was coming. Something bigger than trolls or dementors. And Harry suspected it had everything to do with the Dark Lord who had given him his scar. Fascinating and deeply troubling, Mimir commented when they explained the situation. The severed head's expressions remained remarkably mobile despite his condition. The troll was terraforming. Terra what? Atreus asked. Terraforming. Changing one environment to match another, Mimir explained. It's a sophisticated magical technique, rarely seen outside of deliberate realm creation. Why would someone want to make Midgard more like the wizarding realm? Harry wondered. Perhaps they can't fully cross over as they are, Mimir suggested. Some beings are so thoroughly bound to their native realms that existing in another is painful or impossible without alterations. Kratos' expression darkened. Like this Dark Lord. Harry felt a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air. You think he's trying to create a foothold? A place where he can exist in Midgard without being weakened? It's consistent with what we've observed, Mimir confirmed. Each creature that crosses over makes it easier for the next. The barriers don't just thin, they change composition. So what do we do? Atreus asked. We can't kill every creature that crosses over. No, Kratos agreed. We must find the source. Close it permanently. Harry had been contemplating this problem for years. To close it, we'd need to understand exactly how they're opening it in the first place. He hesitated, then added, which might mean crossing over ourselves. Silence greeted this suggestion. They had discussed the possibility before but always dismissed it as too dangerous. The wizarding world would be as foreign to Kratos and Atreus as Midgard had initially been to Harry, with unknown rules and powers. And for Harry, it would mean facing a past he barely remembered and enemies who had been hunting him for 15 years. The risk is significant, Kratos finally said. But if the alternative is endless incursions? I've been working on something, Harry admitted. A way to cross realms safely, on our terms rather than theirs. He drew Hedwig in a wide circle, activating specific runes along its length. The mirror fragment glowed, projecting images onto the ground, diagrams, calculations, and notes Harry had been compiling. I've been studying how the tiers form, analyzing their magical signature. The wizards use something they call port keys for transportation within their realm. I think with modification, we could create something similar that works between realms. Atreus looked impressed. You've been busy. Couldn't sleep, Harry shrugged. Too many visions. Mimir studied the projected information. Ambitious, lad, but I see the theory. You're essentially creating a controlled tier rather than forcing a rupture. Exactly. And if we can cross over ourselves, we can identify the source of the incursions and neutralize it. Kratos nodded slowly. How long? To complete the calculations and gather materials? A week, maybe less. You have 3 days, Kratos stated. If that troll was preparation for something larger, we must act quickly. Harry accepted the timeline without complaint. Urgency had been a constant companion throughout his life. 3 days was generous by Kratos' standards. I'll need specific materials, he said. Some from the frost giant burial grounds. And something from one of the wizarding creatures, preferably a Dementor, since they seem most closely connected to the other realm. I will obtain what you need, Kratos decided. Atreus, strengthen our defenses. Harry, continue your work. As they prepared to leave Mimir's tree, the head called out, one more thing, lad. If you do cross over, be prepared for how their magic will feel. Your power has evolved uniquely here in Midgard. In the wizarding realm, the balance may shift dramatically. Harry nodded, having considered this. I'm counting on it, actually. Their realm, their rules, might give us insight we can't get from this side. Just be careful, Mimir warned. Power shifts can be unpredictable. The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparation. Harry worked almost continuously, stopping only when exhaustion made precision impossible. The portal device took shape gradually, a circular frame of silver inlaid with both Norse runes and symbols from the wizarding world that Harry had recovered from his memories. Kratos returned from the frost giant burial grounds with the crystallized heart of an ancient giant, similar to but larger than the one in Harry's original staff. Atreus succeeded in capturing the essence of a Dementor, not the creature itself, but a swirling black mist that contained its magical signature. The final component came from Harry himself, blood freely given, the same connection that had allowed the Dark Lord to track him across realms. Blood magic is dangerous, Atreus cautioned as Harry added 7 drops to the frame. All magic is dangerous in the wrong hands, Harry replied, a lesson Kratos had drilled into him since childhood. It's intent that matters. On the evening of the 3rd day, they gathered at the highest point near their home, a flat outcropping of rock with a clear view of the surrounding territory. Harry had determined this location would require the least power to pierce the barrier between realms, as the dimensional membrane was naturally thinner at high elevations. The portal frame stood upright, secured to the stone with both physical brackets and magical anchors. Though inactive, it hummed with potential energy, the crystallized heart pulsing gently at regular intervals. Once activated, how long will it remain stable? Kratos asked, making final adjustments to his weapons and armor. Based on my calculations, approximately 1 hour, Harry answered. After that, the power requirements increase exponentially. We'd need a permanent runic array to maintain it longer. 1 hour to cross over, locate the source, and return, Atreus summarized. Tight timeline. If we need longer, we can always reactivate it from the other side, Harry said. That's why I made the frame portable. It collapses down to this. He demonstrated, touching specific points on the frame that caused it to fold inward until it was the size of a dinner plate. Kratos nodded approvingly. You have planned well. Coming from him, this was high praise indeed. Harry felt a surge of pride, quickly tempered by the gravity of what they were attempting. There's one more thing we should discuss, he said seriously. When we cross over, we'll be in their territory, playing by their rules. Kratos, your godly strength will still work, but the physics might be different. Atreus, your runic magic may behave unpredictably. And your magic? Atreus asked. Harry touched Hedwig, which he'd modified specifically for this journey. It should be stronger there, at least the wizarding components. But my Norse adaptations might weaken. I've built redundancies into Hedwig to compensate, but be prepared for adjustments. Kratos checked the position of the sun, now low on the horizon. It is time. Harry took his position before the portal frame, Hedwig extended. Atreus and Kratos stood to either side, weapons ready. With a deep breath, Harry began the activation sequence, channeling magic through specific pathways in the frame's construction. The crystallized heart flared to life, bathing the mountainside in pale blue light. The Dementor essence swirled faster, creating a vortex at the center of the frame. Harry's blood, dried into the silver, began to glow crimson. First phase complete, Harry announced, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool evening air. Beginning realm alignment. This was the trickiest part, tuning the portal to the specific frequency of the wizarding world rather than any of the other realms that bordered Midgard. Harry closed his eyes, focusing on the memories and visions he'd accumulated over the years, Hogwarts Castle, Diagon Alley, the Ministry of Magic. The mirror fragment in Hedwig reflected these images back into the portal, providing targeting coordinates. The vortex at the center of the frame shifted from black to green, then stabilized into a swirling silvery surface, not quite liquid, not quite gas, but something between states. Portal stabilized, Harry said, lowering Hedwig. We have approximately 1 hour before it collapses. Kratos approached the portal, studying it critically. You will go first. Your connection to that realm will ease our passage. Harry nodded, understanding the logic. He took a moment to center himself, acknowledging the strange mix of emotions churning inside him, anticipation, anxiety, and a curious sense of homecoming despite having no conscious memory of the wizarding world. Remember, he said to Kratos and Atreus, if we get separated, the portal will return us to this exact location. Just get back here within the hour. With that, Harry stepped forward into the swirling silver surface. There was a moment of resistance, as if the portal was testing his right to pass, then a sensation of being compressed from all sides before suddenly breaking free. Harry emerged in what appeared to be a forest clearing, though unlike any in Midgard. The trees were different, oaks and elms rather than the pines and firs he was accustomed to. The air felt heavier, saturated with magic of a different flavor than the Norse realms. Moments later, Kratos and Atreus stepped through, the portal stabilizing behind them into a perfect mirror of the one they'd left on the mountainside. "We made it," Atreus observed, looking around curiously. "Where are we?" Harry concentrated, reaching out with his magical senses. The connection was immediate and overwhelming, like diving into an ocean after a lifetime of swimming in lakes. His innate wizarding magic responded enthusiastically, power flowing through him with unprecedented ease. "England," he said with certainty, though he couldn't explain how he knew. "Somewhere in the north. Probably Scotland." Kratos surveyed their surroundings with the practiced eye of a warrior. Defensible position. Limited visibility. "We should move to higher ground." As if in response to his words, a distant howl echoed through the trees, not wolf or draugr, but something else entirely. Something that made the hair on Harry's arm stand up. "We're not alone," he whispered, raising Hedwig. The mirror fragments swirled with mist before clearing to show their immediate surroundings from an elevated perspective, a scrying technique Harry had perfected over the years. The image revealed what the trees concealed. They were in a large forest adjacent to a lake, and on the far side of that lake stood a magnificent castle perched atop a cliff. "Hogwarts," Harry breathed, the name surfacing from his subconscious. "The school?" Atreus asked, recalling what little Harry had shared about his recovered memories. Harry nodded. "Which means we're in the Forbidden Forest." He glanced in the direction of the howl. "Home to all manner of magical creatures, some quite dangerous." "Good," Kratos said grimly. "Where there are creatures, there are tracks. Tracks lead to origins." They moved through the forest cautiously, with Harry in the lead. His connection to this realm grew stronger with each step, memories surfacing not as visions but as instinctive knowledge. He found himself automatically avoiding certain plants, recognizing them as dangerous without consciously knowing their names. The howl came again, closer this time. Atreus knocked an arrow, its tip glowing with runic energy. Kratos kept the Leviathan axe at ready position. There, Harry pointed to a disturbance in the underbrush ahead. A creature emerged, wolf-like in basic form but larger, its eyes gleaming with unnatural intelligence. Behind it came others, at least a dozen, forming a semicircle around the intruders. "Werewolves," Harry identified. "But something's wrong. It's not the full moon, they shouldn't be transformed." The lead werewolf snarled, revealing teeth that seemed too metallic to be natural. Around its neck hung a silver pendant inscribed with a familiar symbol, a skull with a snake protruding from its mouth. "The dark mark," Harry whispered. "They're not natural werewolves. They've been enhanced, controlled." Before anyone could respond, the pack attacked. Kratos met the charge head-on, axe cleaving through the lead werewolf with godly strength. Atreus's arrows found their marks with unerring accuracy, dropping 2 more. Harry raised Hedwig, expecting his magic to flow with the same easy power he'd felt upon arrival. Instead, he encountered resistance, not from the realm itself but from something deeper, as if 2 opposing forces were fighting for control of his magic. "Stupefy," he shouted, the incantation coming naturally despite never having used it consciously before. A jet of red light burst from Hedwig, striking a werewolf mid-leap and sending it crashing to the ground, unconscious. The spell worked, but Harry felt a strange feedback, a ripple of power returning to him carrying something foreign. No time to analyze it now. The battle demanded his full attention. 3 more werewolves circled around, trying to flank them. Harry created a ring of fire, not with the Norse fire runes he typically used but with a whispered incendio that produced blue flames of unusual intensity. The werewolves retreated from the fire but didn't flee. Their coordination suggested more than animal intelligence, they were being directed. Someone's watching through them, Harry realized. Controlling them remotely. Kratos dispatched another werewolf with brutal efficiency. Find the controller. Harry nodded, focusing on the silver pendants each creature wore. The dark mark symbol pulsed with sickly green energy, the same signature he'd seen in his visions of the snake-faced Dark Lord. Pointing Hedwig at the nearest fallen werewolf, Harry cast a revealing charm on its pendant. The magic connected, creating a visible thread of energy that stretched off into the forest. This way, he said, following the thread while Atreus and Kratos dealt with the remaining werewolves. The magical thread led them deeper into the forest, away from the castle. As they progressed, Harry noticed changes in the environment, patches of frost despite the mild temperature, withered plants, and an increasing sense of dread reminiscent of dementors. The forest is being corrupted, Atreus observed, touching a blackened tree trunk. Like what the troll was doing in Midgard, but more advanced. They've been at it longer here, Harry agreed. Creating a foothold, a base of operations. The thread ended at a clearing dominated by a massive, ancient oak tree. Its bark was blackened, and its branches bent in unnatural angles. At its base, a tear in reality shimmered, not a controlled portal like they had created, but a ragged wound between realms. There's our source, Harry said quietly. But something's not right. It's too raw. Unfinished. Kratos studied the tear with narrowed eyes. A test. Not the main breach. Look, Atreus pointed to markings carved into the ground around the tree, a ritual circle containing both Norse runes and symbols Harry recognized from his recovered wizarding knowledge. They're combining magical systems, Harry realized. Just like I did with the portal, but cruder. Forcing compatibility rather than finding natural resonance. He approached the circle cautiously, Hedwig extended to analyze the magic. The mirror fragment swirled with conflicting energies as it processed the hybrid enchantment. Can you close it? Kratos asked. Not directly, Harry admitted after a moment. They've linked it to multiple anchor points. Closing this tear would just divert the energy elsewhere, potentially creating multiple smaller breaches. Then we find the anchors, Atreus suggested. Harry nodded, continuing his examination. Based on the configuration, there should be 5. 1 for each element, plus a central focus. Split up? Atreus asked. Kratos shook his head. Too dangerous. We stay together, move quickly. Harry pointed to faint trails of magical energy extending from the circle. These will lead us to the anchors. The closest appears to be. He oriented himself. That way, toward the lake. They followed the magical trail, moving with greater urgency now that they understood what they were facing. The forest thinned as they approached the lake, providing better visibility but also making them more exposed. The first anchor sat at the lake's edge, a small stone obelisk carved with both runes and wizarding symbols. Unlike the raw tear, this construct was precise, carefully crafted. Professional work, Harry commented, examining it closely. Not improvised like the werewolf pendants. He pointed to a maker's mark near the base. Whoever created this knows what they're doing. Destroying the anchor proved surprisingly straightforward. Kratos simply crushed it with the Leviathan axe, its magical protections failing against godly strength. As it crumbled, the energy contained within dispersed harmlessly into the lake. 1 down, Atreus said. 4 to go. The remaining anchors were scattered strategically around the forest, one in a cave system to the north, another atop a small hill to the east, a third buried beneath a lightning-struck tree. Each demonstrated the same hybrid magical construction, and each fell to their coordinated efforts. As they approached the location of the 5th and final anchor, Harry felt a familiar tingling in his scar, not pain, but awareness, like proximity to something once connected. Be careful, he warned. This one feels different. The trail led them to a small clearing containing a single standing stone. Unlike the previous anchors, this one was clearly ancient, weathered by centuries of exposure, with moss growing along its base. The newer additions, carved symbols and attached magical foci, stood out against its aged surface. This was here long before they came, Atreus observed. They co-opted existing magic. Harry approached carefully, Hedwig extended. The mirror fragments mist formed into a clear image, not of the stone itself, but of a room elsewhere. A circular chamber with a raised dais at its center, upon which stood a stone archway containing a fluttering veil. The Death Chamber, Harry said, the name surfacing from his recovered memories. In the Department of Mysteries. They've connected the tear directly to it. Why? Kratos asked. It's a gateway between life and death, a permanent, natural passage that's existed for centuries. Harry's voice held wonder and horror in equal measure. They're not just creating a way between realms, they're trying to bridge the gap between life and death itself. For what purpose? Atreus wondered. Resurrection, Harry said grimly. The Dark Lord was defeated when he attacked my parents. Not killed, exactly, but reduced to something less than human. They're trying to bring him back fully. The implications sank in quickly. Every creature crossing into Midgard, every alteration to the environment, every test and experiment, all building toward restoring their master to full power. This anchor is different, Harry continued, examining the standing stone. Breaking it might not disperse the energy safely. Then what do we do? Atreus asked. Harry considered, drawing on both his Norse training and his recovered wizarding knowledge. We don't break it. We redirect it. Using Hedwig, he began carefully altering the runic configurations on the stone. Where the original carvings forced compatibility between magical systems, Harry's modifications created natural harmony. Where they had brutally channeled energy, he established balanced flow. What exactly are you doing? Atreus asked, keeping watch while Harry worked. Converting their tier into a controlled portal, Harry explained without looking up. One that we can monitor and eventually close completely once the pressure equalizes between realms. Kratos, who had been scanning their surroundings with increasing tension, suddenly raised his axe. We have company. Dark figures appeared at the edge of the clearing, wizards in hooded robes and silver masks, wands raised. Death Eaters. Protect Harry, Kratos commanded Atreus. I will handle them. Wait, Harry called, still working on the standing stone. They're magic, but Kratos was already moving, godly speed carrying him into the midst of the Death Eaters before they could react. The Leviathan axe cleaved through magical shields as if they were paper, sending two wizards crashing to the ground. The remaining Death Eaters recovered quickly, jets of colored light erupting from their wands. Kratos dodged with supernatural agility, but one spell, a sickly purple beam, caught him in the shoulder. Instead of a physical impact, the magic seemed to seep into him, causing him to stagger momentarily. Kratos! Atreus shouted, immediately firing a barrage of arrows. Harry wanted to help but couldn't abandon his work on the anchor. Any interruption now could cause catastrophic failure, potentially collapsing both realms into each other. He channeled more power into Hedwig, accelerating the delicate process of realignment. Kratos recovered quickly, shaking off whatever effect the spell had attempted to inflict. His expression darkened as he engaged the wizards directly, using his shield to deflect their magic while counterattacking with devastating force. Atreus's arrows, enhanced with runic magic, found gaps in the Death Eater's defenses. One arrow trapped a wizard in ice mid-apparition, leaving him partially materialized and completely vulnerable to Kratos's follow-up strike. Almost done, Harry called, sweat dripping down his face as he completed the final adjustments. A new voice cut through the chaos, calm, measured, and chillingly familiar from Harry's visions. So. The boy returns at last. Harry looked up to see a tall, thin wizard standing at the edge of the clearing. Unlike the others, he wore no mask, revealing a gaunt face with deep-set eyes that studied Harry with cold calculation. Rookwood, Harry identified, recognizing him from their encounter years ago. You remember. I'm flattered. Rookwood smiled thinly. Though you've changed considerably. Grown powerful, by all accounts. The Dark Lord will be most interested in what you've become. Your Dark Lord can stay dead, Harry replied, completing the final modification to the standing stone. It pulsed once, then stabilized, the chaotic energy patterns resolving into a controlled flow. Rookwood's smile faded as he sensed the change. What have you done? Corrected your amateur work, Harry said, standing to face him. You were forcing compatibility between magical systems you don't understand. The backlash would have destroyed both realms eventually. Such arrogance, Rookwood's wand came up. Crucio. Harry deflected the curse with Hedwig, the mirror fragment absorbing and dispersing the malicious energy. Is that the best you can do? Unforgivable curses straight out the gate. The term had surfaced from his recovered knowledge, forbidden spells in the wizarding world, carrying severe penalties. That Rookwood used one so casually spoke volumes about the man's character. You think yourself clever, Rookwood snarled, casting again. But you've merely delayed the inevitable. The Dark Lord rises, with or without your cooperation. While they exchanged words and spells, Kratos and Atreus had methodically reduced the number of Death Eaters. Only 3 remained standing, now fighting defensively rather than pressing the attack. Your reinforcements are falling, Harry observed, maintaining his defensive posture while gathering power. You might want to reconsider your position. Rookwood's expression twisted into something ugly. Always so confident, even as a child. But you don't understand what you're interfering with. The anchors were nearly aligned. The vessel is prepared. All that remains is the final component. Which is the blood of the enemy, forcibly taken. Rookwood's wand moved in a complex pattern. Your blood, Harry Potter. The spell that erupted from his wand wasn't aimed at Harry but at the standing stone behind him. The anchor flared with intense green light, the same sickly color Harry associated with the killing curse. Before he could react, tendrils of energy shot from the stone, wrapping around his wrists and throat. Harry! Atreus shouted, immediately firing at Rookwood. The wizard deflected the arrow with a casual flick of his wand. Your Norse weapons are impressive but predictable. We've studied them extensively since your little family began interfering with our work in Midgard. The energy tendrils tightened, pulling Harry back against the standing stone. Where they touched his skin, they burned, drawing blood that flowed not down his arms but into the stone itself, absorbed by the carved symbols. The blood connection works both ways, Rookwood explained, approaching cautiously while Kratos and Atreus were occupied with the remaining Death Eaters. The Dark Lord's essence flows in your veins from that night in Godric's hollow. And now, your blood will flow into him, completing the cycle. Harry struggled against the binding, channeling magic through Hedwig to counteract the spell. The mirror fragment flared brilliantly, creating a feedback loop that momentarily loosened the tendrils. That's it, Rookwood encouraged, surprisingly genuine. Fight. Resist. The stronger your magic, the more potent the connection. With horrifying clarity, Harry realized Rookwood wanted him to use his power, that his magical resistance was somehow feeding the very ritual he was trying to prevent. He immediately ceased channeling through Hedwig, instead reaching for the raw, wandless magic he'd spent years learning to control. The shift caught Rookwood off guard. The tendrils flickered as Harry focused not on breaking them but on transforming their nature, changing their composition from binding energy to harmless light. Interesting approach, Rookwood commented, adjusting his own spell to compensate. But ultimately futile. The ritual has begun. Even now, the Dark Lord draws strength from your struggle. Across the clearing, Kratos dispatched the last Death Eater with brutal efficiency. Seeing Harry's predicament, he charged toward Rookwood, axe raised. The wizard turned smoothly, casting a spell that should have slowed Kratos to a crawl. Instead, the god of war pushed through it as if moving through heavy water, slowed but not stopped, godly will overcoming magical constraint. Rookwood's eyes widened in genuine surprise. Remarkable. Your adoptive father is more than he appears. Harry used the distraction to continue his subtle transformation of the binding tendrils. One by one, they changed from solid energy to ephemeral light, still visible but losing their physical grip. Atreus, recognizing what Harry was attempting, provided covering fire that forced Rookwood to divide his attention between multiple threats. An arrow enhanced with shock runes narrowly missed the wizard's head, singeing his hair and momentarily disrupting his concentration. That brief lapse was all Harry needed. With a final push of wandless magic, he converted the last tendril to light and lunged away from the standing stone. Rookwood snarled in frustration, casting another binding spell that Harry deflected with a hastily raised shield charm. "You cannot stop what has already begun," Rookwood insisted, backing away as Kratos closed distance. "The blood has been taken. The connection is established." Harry felt it then, a pull through his scar, different from the pain he'd experienced as a child but unsettlingly familiar. Not the fragment of soul that Freya had removed years ago, but something else, something older and more fundamental. "What have you done?" he demanded, raising Hedwig defensively. Rookwood smiled thinly. "Merely completed what was started 15 years ago. The Dark Lord's essence seeks its rightful vessel." "I am not his vessel," Harry snarled, anger rising at the implication. "That fragment is gone." "The Horcrux, yes," Rookwood agreed. "A crude but effective method of soul preservation. But your connection runs deeper. You were marked as his equal that night, your magic forever intertwined with his." Before Harry could respond, the standing stone behind him flared with renewed energy. The carefully controlled flow he had established destabilized as Rookwood's blood ritual interacted with the anchor magic. The tear between realms widened, not toward the death chamber he had seen in the mirror, but toward somewhere else, somewhere cold and dark and empty. "Yes," Rookwood breathed, watching with something like religious awe. "He comes." From the widening tear, a shape began to emerge, not fully corporeal, more like smoke given rudimentary form. It had no features yet, but its silhouette suggested the tall, thin figure Harry had glimpsed in his visions. Kratos, recognizing the new threat, immediately redirected his attack toward the emerging entity. The Leviathan axe flew true, passing directly through the smoky form without apparent effect before returning to his hand. "Conventional weapons cannot harm what is not yet fully materialized," Rookwood gloated. "Only magic of equal origin can affect him now, and you, dear Harry, are the only one here who possesses such magic." The smoky figure turned toward Harry, extending what might have been an arm. Where it pointed, Harry felt his scar responding, not with pain but with recognition, like calling to like. "No," Harry whispered, raising Hedwig. The staff hummed with conflicting energies, his innate wizarding magic resonating with the approaching entity while the Norse elements resisted. "Accept your destiny," Rookwood urged. "The Dark Lord returns, and you, as his magical heir, will stand at his right hand. Or perish, as your parents did." The mention of his parents ignited something in Harry, not just anger but clarity. He was Harry of Midgard, son of Kratos and Atreus by choice if not by blood. The identity he had built over 15 years would not be erased by this spectral remnant of his past. "I reject your lord," Harry stated firmly, channeling power through Hedwig. "And I reject the connection he forced upon me." The mirror fragment in his staff flared to life, reflecting not just light but magical essence. Harry directed it toward the smoky figure, creating a feedback loop that trapped the entity between reflection and reality. "What are you doing?" Rookwood demanded, suddenly alarmed. Breaking the connection, Harry replied through gritted teeth, the effort of maintaining the magical mirror taxing his strength. "Permanently." The smoky figure writhed within the reflective trap, its form stretching and compressing as it sought escape. Where it touched the mirror's energy, it seemed to dissolve, returning to the tear from which it had emerged. Rookwood raised his wand, casting frantically to disrupt Harry's spell. "Stop! You'll destroy everything we've worked for." An arrow from Atreus struck the wizard's hand, causing him to drop his wand with a cry of pain. Kratos followed immediately, closing distance and delivering a blow that sent Rookwood crashing into a tree trunk. Freed from interference, Harry focused entirely on containing and repelling the entity. Drawing on both his wizarding heritage and his Norse training, he created a hybrid spell unlike anything he'd attempted before, a banishment ritual that incorporated elements from both magical traditions. "You marked me," Harry addressed the trapped entity directly. "You killed my parents and tried to kill me. You left your magic in my blood. But I am not yours to claim." The smoky figure coalesced briefly into a more defined shape, a face, snake-like with gleaming red eyes, contorted in fury. A mouth formed, speaking words Harry felt rather than heard. "You cannot escape what you are." "I know exactly what I am," Harry replied. "And what I am not." With that, he completed the banishment spell. The mirror fragment in Hedwig shattered, each piece continuing to reflect the trapped entity while simultaneously pushing it back toward the tear. The standing stone cracked down its center, the blood Rookwood had harvested vaporizing in a burst of steam. The entity fought desperately, tendrils of smoke reaching toward Harry, trying to re-establish the connection through his scar. For a moment, Harry felt it, the cold, alien consciousness that had haunted his dreams since infancy, pushing against the boundaries of his mind. "My son," Kratos' voice cut through his concentration, grounding him in the present. "Finish it." Harry nodded once, drawing on his deepest reserves. With Hedwig braced against the ground, he channeled power not in a controlled stream but in a massive surge, raw magical force that overwhelmed the tenuous connection between him and the entity. The scar on his forehead flared with pain one final time, then went cold and dormant as the last magical ties were severed. The entity shrieked soundlessly, its smoke-like form compressed back through the tear, which began to close without the anchor's magic to sustain it. In the sudden silence that followed, Harry dropped to one knee, exhausted but triumphant. The mirror fragment in Hedwig, though shattered, still held magic, each piece glowing softly before dissolving into dust that spiraled up the staff and reformed at its tip as a single, clear crystal. "Is it over?" Atreus asked, approaching cautiously while keeping an arrow trained on the unconscious Rookwood. Harry touched his scar, feeling nothing but ordinary skin, no warmth, no tingling, no awareness of another consciousness. "Yes. The connection is broken." Kratos surveyed the damage, the cracked standing stone, the collapsed Death Eaters, the scorched earth where the tear had been. "We should return to Midgard. Others will come to investigate." Harry nodded, gathering strength to stand. As he did, he noticed something remarkable, the magic flowing through him felt different. Cleaner somehow, more completely his own. The strange resistance he'd encountered when first arriving in this realm had vanished, replaced by a harmonious blend of his wizarding heritage and Norse training. "Something's changed," he said, examining his hands as if they might show visible signs of the transformation. "My magic is truly yours now," Atreus suggested. "Not influenced by his." Harry nodded slowly. "It feels right. Balanced." They secured Rookwood with both physical bindings and magical constraints before gathering what information they could from the site. The remaining anchors would need to be properly dismantled rather than simply destroyed, but that could wait. For now, they had accomplished their primary objective, preventing the Dark Lord's return and breaking Harry's unwanted connection to him. As they prepared to activate their portal back to Midgard, Harry paused, looking toward the distant castle silhouetted against the twilight sky. Hogwarts, a place that might have been his home in another life, filled with people who might have been his friends and teachers. "Do you want to see it?" Atreus asked, following his gaze. "We have time." Harry considered the question seriously. Part of him was curious about the world he might have known, the life he might have led. But another part recognized that such exploration would only complicate what had finally become clear. "No," he decided. "That's not my path. Maybe someday, but not today." Kratos placed a hand on his shoulder, a rare gesture of physical affection. "A wise choice." Harry activated the portal, the silver surface swirling into existence between the frame's boundaries. As the three of them stepped through, returning to the mountainside in Midgard, Harry felt the weight of 15 years lifting from his shoulders. The scar would always remain, a visible reminder of where he had come from. But its power over him, the unwanted connection it had represented, was gone. What remained was entirely his choice, the family he had embraced, the magic he had mastered, the identity he had forged. He was Harry of Midgard, the lightning bearer, son of Kratos and Atreus, and for the first time in his life, that was all he needed to be. The repercussions of their journey extended far beyond personal victory. With the main anchor destroyed and the connection to the Dark Lord severed, the random incursions from the wizarding world slowed dramatically. Creatures still occasionally crossed over, the barriers between realms would always have natural thin spots, but the deliberate, coordinated attack ceased entirely. In the months that followed, Harry worked with Brock and Sindri to create permanent monitoring devices for the weakest boundary points. The dwarves, always eager for challenging commissions, outdid themselves with intricate sensors that could detect the slightest fluctuation in the fabric between worlds. "Never thought I'd be crafting interdimensional alarm systems," Brock grumbled good-naturedly as he put the finishing touches on a particularly complex device. "But beats making the same old swords and axes year after year." "Speak for yourself," Sindri sniffed. "I find traditional weaponry perfectly satisfying." He turned to Harry. "Though I must admit, your hybrid magical approach has opened some interesting possibilities." Harry, now 16, had grown into his power with newfound confidence. Without the Dark Lord's influence, his magic had stabilized into something uniquely his own, neither purely wizarding nor strictly Norse, but a harmonious blend that drew strength from both traditions. Hedwig had been reforged after the battle, incorporating the reformed crystal that had once been the mirror fragment. This new focus reflected Harry's evolved magic, balanced, integrated, responsive to both structured runic patterns and intuitive wizarding techniques. "There's something else we should discuss," Sindri said, uncharacteristically hesitant. "Something we found when analyzing one of the wizard devices you brought back." Harry looked up from where he'd been examining a sensor. "What is it?" Sindri exchanged glances with Brock before continuing. "Their magic has a different signature than yours. Even accounting for your Norse influences, there's something fundamentally distinct about your core power." "Meaning?" "Meaning you ain't just any wizard kid," Brock said bluntly. "Your magic's got god stuff mixed in. Old god stuff, not the Norse pantheon." Harry frowned. "That's impossible. I was born to human parents in the wizarding world." "Maybe," Sindri allowed. "Or maybe there's more to your lineage than you know. The wizarding world might have its own gods, its own divine bloodlines." It was an unsettling thought, that after finally breaking free from one unwanted connection, he might discover another hidden aspect to his identity. But Harry had learned to face such revelations head-on rather than avoiding them. "Can you tell what kind of god stuff specifically?" he asked. "Not precisely," Sindri admitted. "But it resonates most strongly with natural forces, particularly storms and transitions. Liminal magic. Lightning and crossroads," Brock translated. "Your specialty." Harry touched Hedwig thoughtfully. His affinity for lightning had predated the heart stone from the storm giant, it had always been there, manifesting even in his earliest accidental magic as a child. And his talent for crossing between states, transforming objects, bridging gaps between realms, had only grown stronger after the Dark Lord's influence was removed. "Does it matter?" he finally asked. "I am who I am, regardless of where the magic comes from." Brock barked a laugh. "Now you sound like the big guy. All stoic and philosophical." "Kratos has that effect," Harry smiled. "But seriously, whatever my magic is, whatever its source, it's mine to use as I choose. That's what matters." "Well said," Sindri approved. "Though if you ever want to explore it further, I'll know who to ask," Harry assured him. Life settled into a new rhythm after the confrontation in the wizarding world. They remained vigilant, but the immediate threat had passed. Harry divided his time between monitoring the realm boundaries, continuing his training, and occasionally assisting Freya with research into combined magical systems. His relationship with the goddess had evolved over the years from cautious alliance to genuine friendship. She recognized in Harry a unique magical perspective untainted by the biases of either realm, and he valued her vast knowledge and willingness to explore unconventional approaches. "You've created something entirely new," she observed during one of their sessions. "Not Norse, not wizarding, but a third path." Harry demonstrated the technique they'd been discussing, a method of enchanting objects that combined runic activation with wizarding permanence charms. "It just seems logical to take the best from both traditions." "Logic has little to do with it," Freya smiled. "Your magic works this way because you see no reason why it shouldn't. Most practitioners are limited by what they believe possible." "Kratos would say limitations exist only in the mind," Harry replied. "And he would be right, for once," Freya acknowledged with a small smile. "Your father may lack magical talent, but he understands willpower better than most gods." Harry didn't correct her use of father without qualifiers. Over the years, the distinction between adoptive and biological had faded in importance. Kratos and Atreus were his family in all the ways that mattered. Their conversation was interrupted by a rumble of thunder, unexpected on what had been a clear day. Harry looked up, immediately alert to the magical disturbance. "That's not natural," he said, already reaching for Hedwig. Freya nodded, her own senses confirming his assessment. "No. Something approaches." They moved outside to find the sky darkening with unnatural speed, clouds forming directly overhead in a spiral pattern. Lightning flickered within the formation, but unlike ordinary storms, the bolts were a deep purple rather than white or blue. "Is it them again?" Freya asked, referring to the wizards. Harry shook his head, extending his magical senses. "No. Different signature entirely." He frowned, concentrating. "Almost like Asgard." The spiral tightened, forming a funnel that reached toward the ground. From within this vortex descended a figure, tall, golden-armored, with a flowing red cape and long blonde hair. In one hand he carried a massive hammer that crackled with electricity. "Thor," Freya identified, her voice hardening. "After all this time." The thunder god touched down with surprising grace for one of his size. He surveyed his surroundings, gaze eventually settling on Harry with unmistakable interest. "So," his voice boomed across the clearing. "This is the one they speak of. The mortal who wields lightning not of my father's making." Harry stood his ground, Hedwig held casually but ready. "I am Harry of Midgard. And you're trespassing in Freya's territory." Thor laughed, the sound like distant thunder. Bold words from a young one. His eyes narrowed as he studied Harry more closely. "But not entirely mortal, are you? There's something else there. Something familiar." "What do you want, Thor?" Freya demanded, stepping forward. "Your father's death should have ended these visitations." "I come out of curiosity, nothing more," Thor replied, though his casual tone didn't reach his eyes. Word reached Asgard of disturbances in the fabric between realms. Creatures and powers not of the nine. And at the center of it all, he nodded toward Harry, a boy who commands lightning and crosses world boundaries. "Such things interest me." Harry felt Freya tense beside him, her magic gathering defensively. "I stopped those disturbances," he said carefully. "The tiers between realms are being monitored and controlled." "So I've heard," Thor acknowledged. "Impressive work for one so young." He took a step forward, causing Freya to raise her hands in warning. "Peace, Vanir. I mean no harm today. I merely wish to see what he can do." "This isn't a demonstration," Harry replied firmly. "And I'm not interested in performing for your amusement." Thor's expression darkened momentarily before settling into something more calculated. "Not amusement. Assessment." He raised Mjolnir slightly. Lightning is my domain, boy. If another wields it within the 9 realms, I would know their measure. Harry recognized the challenge behind the seemingly reasonable request. Thor hadn't come out of mere curiosity, he'd come to establish dominance, to remind everyone that he was the thunder god, the rightful master of lightning. My powers are my own, Harry stated calmly. I answer to no god's authority over them. Thor's smile tightened. Brave words. But ultimately incorrect. Without warning, he raised Mjolnir to the sky. Lightning responded immediately, massive bolts striking the hammer before redirecting toward Harry in a blinding cascade. Harry reacted instinctively, Hedwig rising to intercept. The crystal at its tip flared brilliantly, absorbing the incoming lightning rather than deflecting it. The energy coursed through the staff, through Harry, and into the ground in a controlled circuit that left him unharmed. Thor's expression shifted from confidence to surprise. Interesting. Not just resistance but redirection. Before he could launch another attack, a new voice cut through the tension. Enough. Kratos emerged from the tree line, the Leviathan axe glowing coldly in his grip. Atreus followed a step behind, bow already drawn. Ah, Thor's face split in a predatory grin. The ghost of Sparta. I wondered when you would appear. His gaze shifted to Atreus. And Loki. A family reunion. Leave, Kratos commanded. You have no quarrel here. Don't I? Thor countered. You killed my father, my half-brother, and who knows how many of our kin. And now you harbor this. He gestured at Harry, whatever he is. Another godling from foreign realms, gathering power in our territories. Harry is under my protection, Kratos stated flatly. Challenge him, and you challenge me. The air between them practically crackled with tension. Though Odin was gone, the bad blood between Kratos and Thor remained unresolved. Everyone present knew that if battle were joined now, it would not end until one or both lay dead. Surprisingly, it was Harry who broke the standoff. Stepping forward, he planted Hedwig firmly before him. I don't need protection, father. But I won't be bullied either. Addressing Thor directly, he continued, you want to know what I can do? Fine. A demonstration, then. One exchange, no lethal intent. After that, you leave in peace. Thor's eyebrows rose in genuine surprise, followed by a booming laugh. Well now. The boy has spirit. He lowered Mjolnir to a ready position. One exchange. No lethal intent. Agreed. Kratos moved to intervene, but Harry shook his head slightly. Trust me, he said quietly. I know what I'm doing. After a moment's hesitation, Kratos stepped back, though his grip on the Leviathan axe never relaxed. Atreus positioned himself strategically, ready to provide covering fire if needed. Harry and Thor faced each other across the clearing. The thunder god rolled his shoulders, electricity dancing around his armor as he prepared whatever devastating attack he planned to unleash. Whenever you're ready, boy, he called. Show me this power that has Asgard so concerned. Harry centered himself, drawing on everything he had learned over the years, Kratos' lessons about discipline and control, Atreus' teachings on runic magic, Freya's insights into magical harmony, and his own innate understanding of wizarding techniques. Thor struck first, as Harry had expected. Mjolnir rose and fell in a smooth arc, calling down lightning of unprecedented magnitude. The bolt that struck the hammer would have obliterated a lesser being, and the redirected blast that Thor sent toward Harry carried enough power to level a small mountain. Instead of attempting to match the attack directly, a contest he knew he would lose, Harry implemented the strategy he had conceived the moment Thor appeared. Using Hedwig to create a localized distortion in space, he transformed the lightning's nature as it approached, converting raw destructive energy into pure magical potential. The result was spectacular. The lightning didn't strike Harry but was absorbed into a swirling matrix of silver and green energy that formed around him like a cocoon. The power Thor had unleashed, rather than destroying, was transmuted and redirected, not back at the thunder god, but outward in a perfect circle that temporarily transformed the very ground beneath them. Where the energy touched, winter briefly turned to spring. Grass grew, flowers bloomed, and trees budded, a circle of life energy expanding outward from Harry at its center. The display lasted only moments before normalizing, but its impact was undeniable. Thor stood momentarily speechless, Mjolnir lowered in genuine surprise. What manner of lightning is this, he finally managed, that creates rather than destroys? The kind that belongs to me, Harry replied simply. As I said, my power is my own. For a tense moment, Thor's expression was unreadable. Then, unexpectedly, he threw back his head and laughed, a genuine sound of delight rather than mockery. Well played, young one, he declared, securing Mjolnir at his belt. Well played indeed. He looked at Kratos with newfound respect. You've raised an interesting son, Ghost of Sparta. Not what I expected. He is full of surprises, Kratos acknowledged, though his stance remained ready. Thor nodded once to Harry. We will meet again, Lightning Bearer. Perhaps under different circumstances. His gaze swept the gathered company. I honor our agreement. One exchange, completed. I take my leave. With that, he raised Mjolnir skyward once more. The storm clouds responded, forming the same spiral vortex that had delivered him. In a flash of lightning and a rumble of thunder, Thor ascended, vanishing as quickly as he had appeared. In the sudden quiet, Freya let out a breath. That could have ended much worse. Why didn't it? Atreus wondered, lowering his bow. Thor isn't known for his restraint. Because Harry surprised him, Freya suggested. Few things intrigue gods more than the unexpected. Harry leaned on Hedwig, suddenly tired from the immense effort of redirecting Thor's lightning. Or maybe he just knew he'd get more than he bargained for if he pushed further. Kratos approached, studying Harry with that penetrating gaze that still occasionally made him feel like a child again. You took a risk. A calculated one, but still a risk. I learned from the best, Harry replied with a small smile. Wasn't it you who told me that sometimes the only way to defuse a confrontation is to meet it head-on? Kratos grunted, which Harry had learned over the years could mean anything from disagreement to reluctant pride. This particular grunt leaned toward the latter. The transformation you performed was remarkable, Freya noted. Converting destructive energy directly into life force, I've never seen such a technique. It felt right, Harry said, examining Hedwig. The crystal at its tip still glowed faintly with absorbed power. Like something I've always known how to do but never needed to try. Thor called you Lightning Bearer, Atreus commented. Not a bad title. Harry shrugged. I prefer just Harry. Gods love their titles, Freya said with a touch of amusement. And whether you claim godhood or not, you've certainly earned Thor's respect. That's no small achievement. Later, as they journeyed back to their home, Atreus fell in step beside Harry. You know what this means, right? Thor returning, taking interest in you specifically. Harry nodded. Things are changing again. The balance of power in the 9 realms is shifting. And you're part of it now, Atreus said. Not just our family's story, but the larger narrative. The gods have noticed you. Let them notice, Harry replied without concern. I've faced darker things than gods. Kratos, walking ahead, glanced back with what might have been the ghost of a smile. Well said. As his 16th year progressed, Harry found himself increasingly drawn to questions of identity and purpose. The confrontation with Thor had highlighted his unique position, neither fully of the wizarding world nor entirely of the Norse realms, yet somehow connected to both. The dwarf's suggestion that his magic contained god stuff lingered in his thoughts. Not because he desired godhood, living with Kratos and Atreus had taught him the burdens that came with divine heritage, but because understanding his nature might help him better control and direct his growing power. You're distracted, Kratos observed during a training session. Your mind wanders. Harry nodded, lowering Hedwig. I've been thinking about what Thor said. About my lightning not being of Odin's making. Thor speaks to unsettle his opponents, Kratos dismissed. A battle tactic. Maybe, Harry allowed. But what if there's truth to it? What if my magic comes from somewhere else, some pantheon we don't even know about? Kratos considered this, his expression thoughtful rather than dismissive. There are many gods across many realms. Some older than others, some forgotten entirely. Doesn't it matter where my power comes from? Who I really am? No. Kratos's response was immediate and certain. You are what you choose to be. Not what blood or magic or prophecy dictate. It was a lesson Kratos had imparted many times over the years, one Harry had generally accepted without question. But now, standing at the threshold of adulthood with power that even gods acknowledged, the question of origin seemed more relevant than ever. I think I need to find out, Harry said finally. Not because it will change who I am, but because knowledge is its own kind of power. Kratos studied him for a long moment before nodding once. Then we will seek this knowledge. Together. The journey that followed took them to places Harry had never seen, ancient temples buried beneath mountains, libraries hidden in pocket dimensions between realms, shrines to gods whose names had been forgotten by all but the most dedicated scholars. Mimir proved an invaluable guide, his encyclopedic knowledge directing them to sources that might illuminate Harry's unusual magical signature. Freya, too, offered assistance, providing rituals that could trace magical lineage across realms and generations. The spell requires something deeply personal, she explained, preparing a silver bowl inscribed with symbols from multiple pantheons. Not just blood or hair, but something that represents your essence. Harry considered what might best represent him, not Harry Potter, the boy who lived, nor even Harry of Midgard, but the core of who he had become. Finally, he removed a small pendant he'd worn beneath his clothing for years, a tiny replica of the heart stone from his first staff, fashioned by Sindri as a gift for his 10th birthday. This, he said, placing it in the bowl. It's been with me through everything. Freya nodded approval. Perfect. Now, 3 drops of blood freely given. The ritual that followed was unlike any magic Harry had experienced before. The pendant dissolved into the mixture, creating a silvery liquid that rose from the bowl in tendrils of mist. These formed images in the air, places, people, symbols flowing and changing too quickly to fully comprehend. Your magical lineage is complex, Freya observed, studying the patterns. I see Norse influences, obviously, from your upbringing. The wizarding magic of your birth is there too, running deep. And the god stuff Brock mentioned? Harry asked. Freya frowned in concentration. Yes, it's there, but difficult to identify precisely. Older than the Norse pantheon, certainly. Possibly Greek or Egyptian in origin. Harry thought of Kratos' own Greek heritage, wondering if somehow that connection had influenced him. But the images in the mist suggested something else, symbols of crossroads and doorways, lightning and transformation. There, Freya pointed to a recurring pattern, a staff or spear wreathed in serpents. That's Hermes. Greek god of boundaries, travelers, and transitions. Hermes. Harry repeated, the name stirring nothing in his memory. I've never heard of him. He's ancient, even by godly standards, Freya explained. A psychopomp, one who guides souls between realms, and a trickster figure in some accounts. His domains include thresholds, language, and travelers. Harry considered this. So you're saying I have some connection to a Greek god of transitions? It appears so, Freya confirmed. Though how such divine essence entered your bloodline is unclear. Perhaps an ancestor was blessed or cursed by him. Perhaps one of your parents had divine heritage themselves. The mist continued to shift, eventually forming one final, clear image, a lightning bolt identical to the scar on Harry's forehead. That can't be coincidence, Harry murmured, touching his scar. No, Freya agreed. That mark was never just a cursed scar. It's a divine symbol, a claiming mark of sorts. Though whether it was placed intentionally or emerged naturally from your inherent nature is impossible to say. When they reported their findings to Kratos, he received the news with characteristic stoicism. Greek gods, he grunted. Manipulative, selfish creatures. Says the former Greek god, Atreus teased. I speak from experience, Kratos replied darkly. Harry absorbed this new information thoughtfully. So I may have divine heritage connected to Hermes. A god of boundaries and transitions. He gestured to the lightning scar. That would explain my affinity for crossing between states, for transformation magic. And possibly your natural talent for languages, Atreus added. Harry had discovered years ago that he could understand and speak any language after minimal exposure, a skill that had proven useful in dealing with various creatures across the realms. Does it change anything? Kratos asked directly. Harry considered the question seriously. Did knowing he might have divine heritage change who he was or what he wanted? Did it alter his relationship with the family who had raised him? No, he decided firmly. It's just another piece of the puzzle. Interesting, but not defining. Kratos nodded, satisfied. Good. We are more than our bloodlines. Though, Atreus added with a grin, it does mean you're technically part god. Which makes our family even weirder than we thought. Harry laughed. As if we needed help with that. As Harry approached his 17th birthday, the age of majority in the wizarding world, though he knew this only through recovered memories, signs of change began to manifest throughout Midgard. Creatures long absent returned to their ancient territories. Weather patterns shifted, becoming more extreme and unpredictable. The realms adjust, Mimir explained when consulted. With Odin gone and Thor occupied elsewhere, nature reclaims what was artificially controlled for centuries. Is it dangerous? Harry asked, helping to secure their home against increasingly violent storms. Change always carries risk, Mimir replied. But also opportunity. The rigid hierarchies of the old pantheon are dissolving. New powers emerge to fill the void. Harry recognized the implication. You mean me? Among others, Mimir acknowledged. You've made quite an impression, lad. Not just on Thor, but on various powers across the realms. Word spreads of the lightning bearer who walks between worlds. I never asked for that kind of attention, Harry said, uncomfortable with the idea of becoming a known figure in divine politics. Few who deserve power actively seek it, Mimir observed. Which is precisely why beings like yourself become important in times of transition. Before Harry could respond, a familiar sensation prickled at his magical senses, a disturbance in the fabric between realms, but not the chaotic tearing they'd experienced before. This was controlled, deliberate, precise. Someone's coming through, he warned, reaching for Hedwig. Kratos and Atreus immediately moved to defensive positions as a shimmering portal materialized at the edge of their clearing. Unlike the silver surface of Harry's own portal design, this one was golden, its edges perfectly formed without visible support. Through this elegant gateway stepped a single figure, an elderly man with a long silver beard, wearing robes of deep purple adorned with moving stars. Half-moon spectacles perched on his crooked nose, behind which twinkled eyes that surveyed the scene with apparent delight rather than concern. Albus Dumbledore, Harry identified, the name surfacing from his earliest memories. The wizard who had been there the night Kratos and Atreus took him from Godric's Hollow. Harry Potter, Dumbledore replied, his voice warm and somehow familiar despite their brief encounter 17 years ago. Or do you prefer Harry of Midgard now? I understand you've made quite a name for yourself. Harry maintained his defensive stance. How did you find us? The connection was severed. Ah, yes. Your impressive work with Lord Voldemort's attempted return. Dumbledore smiled. You severed the dark connection, certainly. But there are other, more benevolent ties that cannot be so easily broken. The protection your mother placed upon you with her sacrifice, for instance. Why are you here? Kratos demanded, Leviathan axe at ready position. Dumbledore regarded him calmly. To talk, nothing more. And perhaps to apologize for being 17 years late in welcoming Harry to the wizarding world properly. His gaze returned to Harry. Though I see you found your way there eventually, and handled yourself admirably. If you've come to take him, you will fail, Kratos stated flatly. I assure you, I have no such intention, Dumbledore replied, seemingly unperturbed by the threat. Harry is clearly where he belongs, with the family he has chosen. I merely wish to provide information that may be of use to him. What information? Harry asked cautiously. About your heritage, for one thing. Your connection to certain divine powers, for another. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. Yes, I know about your recent discoveries regarding Hermes. It's rather fascinating, actually, a connection we never suspected when you were born. How could you know that? Atreus demanded, arrow still knocked. The wizarding world has its own methods of tracking magical signatures, Dumbledore explained. When Harry performed certain high-level magic during his confrontation with Voldemort's shade, it created ripples that our researchers detected and analyzed. Harry considered this, weighing the risk of engaging versus the potential knowledge to be gained. Finally, he lowered Hedwig slightly, not standing down entirely, but signaling willingness to talk. I'll listen, he decided. But here, not in your world. And they stay. He nodded toward Kratos and Atreus. Of course, Dumbledore agreed readily. I would expect nothing less. What followed was an extraordinary conversation. Dumbledore, once assured that he faced no immediate threat, proved to be a font of information about both the wizarding world and Harry's specific situation within it. Your mother, Lily Evans Potter, was believed to be Muggle-born, a witch born to non-magical parents, he explained. But recent research suggests she may have descended from a squib line, magical people whose ability had weakened over generations. What does this have to do with Hermes? Harry asked. Everything, potentially. Dumbledore's expression grew more serious. There are certain wizarding families whose magic has unusual characteristics, abilities that manifest consistently across generations. The Evans line, though apparently dormant for centuries, appears to have carried markers associated with ancient Greek magical traditions. Divine blood, Kratos surmised. Precisely. Dumbledore nodded. Diluted by time, certainly, but awakened in Lily, and subsequently, in even stronger form, in you, Harry. And my father? Harry asked. James Potter. Descended from Ignotus Peverell, one of 3 brothers who reportedly encountered death itself and received powerful magical artifacts as rewards, or perhaps traps. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. The Peverells were rumored to have divine connections of their own, though to which pantheon remains debated. Harry absorbed this information, finding that it aligned with what they had already discovered while filling in crucial gaps. So both my birth parents carried some form of divine heritage, dormant until activated in me. Enhanced, perhaps, by the unusual circumstances of your survival that night in Godric's Hollow, Dumbledore suggested. Magic responds to extreme conditions, sometimes in ways we cannot predict. And Voldemort? Harry asked. What was he trying to accomplish by returning through me specifically? Dumbledore's expression darkened. Tom Riddle, Voldemort, became obsessed with the prophecy that connected you two. When his killing curse rebounded, creating the scar and transferring certain powers to you, it established a connection he believed could be exploited. The fragment in my scar, Harry said. The Horcrux. Dumbledore looked surprised. You know about Horcruxes? Impressive. Yes, though unwittingly, he made you a vessel for a piece of his soul. But even after that fragment was removed, quite skillfully, I might add, the magical resonance remained. He believed he could use that resonance to rebuild himself. Until I severed it completely, Harry finished. Breaking the final connection. Indeed. Dumbledore studied him with what appeared to be genuine pride. You accomplished what many fully trained wizards could not, Harry. You faced darkness and overcame it on your own terms. The conversation continued as Dumbledore shared information about the current state of the wizarding world, recovering still from Voldemort's first rise to power, with various factions vying for influence. He explained how Harry's name had become legend, the boy who lived, despite his absence. Some believed you dead, he said. Others that you were being trained in secret. Few suspected you had crossed between realms entirely. And now? Harry asked. What happens now that you found me? Dumbledore considered the question carefully. That, my dear boy, is entirely up to you. You've built a life here, a family, an identity of your own making. I would not presume to disrupt that. But? Harry prompted, sensing more. But the wizarding world is your birthright as well. And should you ever wish to explore it further, to learn its magic properly, to connect with the heritage your birth parents left you, there will always be a place for you at Hogwarts. I'm too old to be a student, Harry pointed out. Dumbledore smiled. There are other roles at Hogwarts besides student, Harry. Your unique perspective on magical theory alone would make you a valuable teacher someday, should you desire such a path. He has obligations here, Kratos interjected. Responsibilities. Of course, Dumbledore acknowledged. I'm merely presenting options, not making demands. As the conversation drew to a close, Dumbledore produced a small golden object from within his robes. A gift, he said, offering it to Harry. Your father's. He would have wanted you to have it. Harry accepted the object cautiously, a small, intricate device that unfolded into what appeared to be a pocket-sized telescope. What is it? A two-way portal viewer, Dumbledore explained. James used it during his more adventurous school days. It allows the user to see through any portal or gateway before crossing, quite useful for avoiding unpleasant surprises. Harry examined the device, feeling a strange connection to this relic from his birth father. Thank you. Dumbledore nodded, his expression growing serious. I made a mistake 17 years ago, Harry. I had plans for you, plans I believed necessary for the greater good. When you were taken, those plans collapsed. He smiled faintly. But seeing you now, what you've become, the strength and wisdom you've developed, I cannot help but think the universe had better plans than mine. With that, he turned toward his portal, which had remained open throughout their conversation. Should you ever wish to visit, or simply to talk, you need only call my name while holding that viewer. It will establish a connection. I'll remember that, Harry said, not committing to more. As Dumbledore stepped back through the golden portal, he paused for a final word. Your parents would be proud, Harry. Both sets of them. The portal closed behind him, leaving Harry standing with the viewer in his hands, thoughts tumbling through his mind like leaves in a storm. What will you do? Atreus asked after a moment of silence. Harry looked at the small device, then up at Kratos and Atreus, the family who had raised him, trained him, loved him in their own sometimes gruff but always genuine way. Nothing changes, he said firmly. This is my home. You are my family. Whatever heritage I might have in that other world, whatever place might be waiting for me there, it doesn't alter who I've chosen to be. Kratos nodded once, satisfaction evident in his normally stoic features. A wise decision. Though, Atreus added with a grin, it might be interesting to visit someday. Just to see what we're missing. Harry laughed, tension breaking. Maybe someday. When things are quieter here. But they all knew that in their world, across the 9 realms with gods and monsters and ancient prophecies, things were never truly quiet. There would always be new challenges, new threats, new adventures awaiting them. And Harry of Midgard, the lightning bearer, son of Kratos and Atreus, possible descendant of Hermes and definite slayer of dark wizards, wouldn't have it any other way. As thunder rolled across the distant mountains, natural this time, not Thor's doing. Harry felt the familiar surge of power through his veins. Magic that was entirely his own, shaped by choices rather than destiny, strengthened by family rather than prophecy. He raised Hedwig skyward, letting a small burst of energy arc from its crystal tip to join the gathering storm. A greeting, an acknowledgement, a celebration of what he had become. Not the boy who lived, but the man who chose. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.